In today's class, we are going to be talking about typography and text design in Figma. So we are going to be looking at typefaces and font families majorly. So without wasting much time, let's get to it. Now, in looking at typography and text design in Figma, if you want to create text in Figma, the first thing you need to do is that you need to select the tool. Okay, so the tool for creating text is the text tool. So let's go over to the dynamic toolbar, which is what we have here. Okay, let's say I want to create a text on the canvas. All I need to do is select the text tool. Once you select the text tool, you can see now that it is selected, and that's why there's a highlight. So you come to your Figma canvas, click on the empty canvas, and then automatically you'll now be in typing mode. And then you can type in whatever you want to type in, right? So this is me putting in a word like, let's say, man. Then when you are done, you can see I am still in typing mode, but I am done. So what you can do is that you can click on the empty canvas, and then you have exited what? Typing mode. And you have now created a text. So that is the first way to create a text in what? In Figma. You select the text tool, click on the empty canvas, go into typing mode, and then type in your text. And the second way to create a text in Figma is select the text tool. Then once you get to the empty canvas after selecting the text tool, you can simply hold and drag on the canvas, okay? And then you are going to create what is called a text box. Now, that text box will also give you a typing mode where you can type in whatever you want to type in, okay? So if I just type in some random text, you can see I have now typed in a text in the text box. Now, when you are done, you click on the empty canvas, and you've also created what? A text. Okay, so now I have a normal text created by, first of all, clicking the text tool, clicking on the empty canvas, and then typing in, and then I have a text that is created by the what? By the text box, which I have here. So those are the two ways to create what? To create text in Figma. Now, when you create text in Figma, each text is referred to as a text object. Okay, so I can decide to take this as one text object, and then take this as what? Another text object, because there are two different texts there. Now, there are times when you create a text, let's say in this particular text box, and then you may have spaces between the text. So now that I've created this, let me come over to the next line by clicking on my enter key. Okay, and then let me type in something random. Now you can see that I have a text here, and I have another text here, all within what? Within the same text box, right? As long as they are within the same text box, both texts are said to be dependent, because if I want to change the property of this text at the top here, right? Whatever change I make to the properties of this text here will also affect this other text here. The reason is because they are the same what? They are in the same text box. So once you have two or more text in the same text box, irrespective of the distance, whether it is a paragraph or just a word, provided there are two or more and they are in the same text box, they are referred to as what? Dependent text. Okay, so these texts in here are dependent. This one here is independent of this, okay, because this is in a different what? Text box. So dependent texts are texts that are within the same text box, as you can see, no matter how many they are. Then independent texts are texts that are in different what? Different text boxes. Okay, so that's for that. So we've talked about the text tool and text box, typing mode and text objects, and dependent and independent text. Now, the moment you create a text like we have here, and then you select it, every text has what is referred to as a baseline, which some may call an imaginary letter line. Okay, now the baseline is that line on the text or word or on the paragraph, okay, where the characters of the text are resting on. If I should zoom in on this text now, you can see that I have three characters here, M-A-N, okay? Now, all three characters are resting on one line, which is this line here. So that is referred to as what? As the base line. That's referred to as the baseline. The same thing what I have here now. For this word here that says typography, you can see that all the characters of the word are resting on the line. So that is what we call the baseline or imaginary letter line, okay? So Take note of that. Now, for those text resting on it, you can see that there are some texts that have extended points going downwards, right? Those texts are called, you can call them descenders, okay? So in text, we have ascenders and descenders. Well, as we are going through the training today, we'll be getting to know little about this. So these ones say like letter Y, letter G, letter P, with part of them going below the baseline are referred to as what? Descenders, because they are descending below the what? Below the baseline. Now, throughout the bootcamp and in most of the designs that we are going to be making, both in graphic and UI design, now for the purpose of speed, in order for us to be fast, we are majorly going to be using dummy text in Figma. Okay, so the next thing you want to ask is, how do you create dummy text in Figma instead of us just typing and typing and typing and wasting quality time? Now, to create dummy text in Figma, you are going to have to use a plugin, which is referred to as the Lorem Ipsum plugin. So I will come to the empty canvas now. I will right click on the canvas and then this menu comes up. Move it down to where you have plugins, and then I already have it here because I have it saved in my Figma file already. Now for you, what you should do is go to where it says manage plugins. Click on that. Okay. Once you click on that, you are going to see that this other menu comes up. And once you get here, make sure that this button here that says plugins and widgets is selected. Okay, and then click on the search bar and then type in Lorem Ipsum, LOREM-IPSUM. Now, when it loads up, you are going to see the plugin and then you run the plugin. Okay, we did a running of a plugin recently, what we did for Unsplash and Pexels. So by now you already know how to run plugins. So when you run it, automatically it's going to be saved to your Figma plugins. Okay, so now let's say I want to create, let me take this out. Let's say I want to create and use dummy text. And what do I do? Very simple. I can first of all create a text box. I'll click on the text tool, come to the empty canvas, hold and drag on the canvas, and then I have my text box, and automatically I am in typing mode. Okay. Now, what you can then do is come to the empty canvas after creating your text box. Get out of the text box and come to the empty canvas. Right click on the empty canvas and then go to where it says plugins and then bring up Lorem Ipsum. Load it up. Now, the moment I click on that, it's actually going to load up. Okay, you see, it's now loading up. And now I can put in sentences, I can put in paragraphs, I can put in words, I can put in just characters like A, B, C, or D. Okay, so take note of that. So if I want to put in a sentence, you're going to ask me what is the number of sentences I want to put in. Okay, so that's for that. So if I type in generate now, if I click on that button that says generate, it's going to give me 5 sentences because that is what I've actually set here in the Lorem Ipsum type settings. Now, if you look below it, you are going to see another button here that says auto generate. Okay, the label there says generate the perfect amount of text to fit the layers frame. You know that this is a rectangle and it has a particular height, which is from this top here to the bottom here. So if you want text to completely fill this box, you can click on auto generate. Okay, so let's just do that for this case, or you can decide to just put in a few words there in 5 sentences. It might not fill the box in that case. Let's say it might be in, let's say, this region here, right? So we are going to click on the auto generate so that, because I actually want to fill this box up right now. So if I click on that, okay, let's Ctrl Z that. Let's zoom out a little. Let's create that text box again. Then click on the empty canvas. Then bring up Lorem Ipsum. I think let's try both of them. So let's start with the sentence. If I click on generate, it has generated some words for me here, but they are outside the text box. So what I'm going to do is, there's a way we can fix that, but we're getting to that slowly. So let's just generate something little. So this is me bringing up Lorem Ipsum again and generating little dummy text here. So instead of that, I'm going to put in, let's just put in 1 sentence. Click on generate and let's see what we have. Okay, it's still coming out here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the text box, just hold and drag it, because the text box always needs to cover the text, right? And then I have something like this. Okay, so you can also extend it from the edge, and then you see the text wrapping in this in this manner. That is for us actually generating just a few sentences. Now, if you create a text box and you want to fill it up, click on the empty canvas, bring up the plugin, and then click on auto generate. Okay, click on auto generate, and you're going to see that it brings up text that completely fills up the text box. So this is how we are going to be creating dummy text in Figma, both for when we're working with UI design and graphic design. Okay, so this is how it is done. Now that we know how to create text in Figma, the next thing I want us to look at is converting text to vectors. No, we are converting shape tools to vectors. You can also convert a text to a vector. Now, to convert a text to a vector, what I'll simply do is I'll bring in a little text here that says something like, let's put in the same thing we put in before. Okay. And then click on the empty canvas to make sure that it's selected. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to create a copy of this. Now, there are two ways to create or to convert a text to a vector. Now, the first way is you select the text. Okay, so let's use this now. We select this, and on your keyboard, you can click on Ctrl E, just the way you did for what you did for shape tools, right? If you can notice, right now, the bounding box is such that I have some space here at the top here, and I have some space at the bottom here. But the moment I click on Ctrl E, what's going to happen is that this box, now this text box, is going to actually hug the content. Okay, so this box I have it outside it. It's referred to as a text box. Just the way we have a bounding box for a rectangle or any shape tool that is drawn. So if I click on Ctrl E, this text box is actually going to come closer to the text. Okay, so coming closer to it is called hugging. It's going to hug the text. So now that I have it selected, if I click on Ctrl E, you can see now that it's hugging the text. And over here, it says what? Vector path. So by clicking on Ctrl E, it takes everything as one vector, because if you come over here, you can see that only one item is selected here, right? Now, right now it's in a vector path. So to put it in vector selection and editing mode, you can click on Enter key. And automatically, you are now in what? Vector selection and editing mode. And then you can hold any section of the text and edit it the way you want. Okay, so you can do your editing to any section of the text and also apply vector properties to it. You can see that the vector editing toolbar is now up here. So from here, I can actually apply all vector properties to text the way I did for shape tools. Okay, now, like I said, there are two ways to actually create or convert a text to a vector. So the first way is what we just treated, clicking on Ctrl E and then click on the Enter key to go into vector selection and editing mode. Now, what this method does is that it takes the entire word and treats them as one vector. Okay, and that's why you can see that only one object is selected here. But then you can also go into the individual letters or characters and edit them. So that's for that. So I want to leave this vector mode now and explain the second method to actually make a text a vector path. Now, if I want to exit vector mode, of course, you can click on your escape key twice, or you can come over here and click on this move tool here. Know that anytime we have the vector editing toolbar, it also comes with its own move tool. Okay, so this is an extra move tool here. So as long as I'm using these tools, I'll still be in vector mode. So if I want to exit vector mode, I can just go and start using the dynamic toolbar directly. The moment I click on anything here, automatically I have exited what? Vector mode. So I can click on the next text now and then try to make it a vector. Now, how do I make it a vector? Or what is the second method with which I can create vectors with text? And what you want to do is right click on it. Once you right click on it, right, a context menu comes up. And then you go to where it says outline stroke. Okay. Now, if I click on outline stroke, in the same way, you can see now that the text box is now hugging the text, right? Just like we had for the other case just now. So now that we are there, notice that the moment I also clicked on outline stroke, over here on the layers panel, it has automatically converted this into a vector with different selections for each of the text. Okay, you can see that there's a selection for M, a selection for A, and there's a selection for what? For N. Unlike when we did this one, it took everything as what? As one vector. Okay, so this method is majorly used when you are trying to create a logo. This first method will be used where it will combine everything, use everything as just one text or one vector element. Okay, then this other method could be used if you want to actually just really edit individual characters of the text. For example, I can come over here, select M, and then move it a bit this way. Okay, but with this method, I can't do that. Okay, everything here is selected as what? As one box. If you try to select one, you see everything goes into vector selection and editing mode, right? So with this method, you can't actually achieve that effect. But with this, you'll be able to select each of them as a vector and even separate them and edit them separately. Okay, so take note of that. So that's the difference between the two. Now, once you've actually put them in vector mode, now what you can simply do is that you can select each of them and then click on enter, and then you see that that is now in vector selection and editing mode. Okay, the same thing for the next one, the same thing for what's the next one. All right, so these are the two ways to actually put a text in vector selection and editing mode and do your edits on the what? On the text. Now that we are done with all this, I'm going to zoom out a bit and then I'm going to take all these out, okay, so that we can look into other properties of text. So I'm going to take all these out. Now, the next property of text we want to look at is how do we edit text in Figma, editing text in Figma. Now that we know how to create text, the next thing we want to look at is how do we edit created text in Figma. Okay, so now in editing text in Figma, the only way you can edit text in Figma is if you understand the text properties of the text that you actually want to edit. Okay, now for text properties, now we are going to be looking at things like typeface, otherwise known as font family. Okay, and then we are going to be looking at types of typefaces and type, or which is equivalent to types of font families and a lot of other properties. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to actually bring in a text again. Click on the empty canvas and let's just say, let me write in typography. Let me zoom in a bit. Okay, and then I'm going to make a copy of that and bring it over here. Okay, now you know that automatically the moment you actually type in a text on the canvas, Figma gives it a typeface or a font family by default. Okay, so now if I select this text that I've put in here and I come to the properties panel under typography, because most of the text properties will be seen under what? Under typography. So under typography, you can see that over here, I already have a selection by default. In mine says Titanium Web. All right, so let me leave that for this text. Now, what you have here is referred to as the font family of the of the text, or otherwise known as the typeface of the text. So if I should click on the other text or the next text there, it's actually the same the same font family or the same typeface. So I can decide to change that. So let's say something like okay, let's use something like, I got one just now that I would have loved to use. Let's use this. Okay, so now I have two different types of text here. Now, typeface in terms of text, typeface simply refers to the design or style of letters and characters in the text. Okay, like how the alphabet looks when you read or type it. Now you can see that the way this text looks and the way this other one looks, they are different. Okay, look at the letter T over here. Look at the way it's designed. And then look at the letter T over here. You can see that the design of letter T here, as well as other characters, okay, in this text and in this one, they are not actually the same. So typeface simply refers to the design of this character. How these characters are actually designed. That's what we refer to as typeface. In a typeface is also referred to as font family, like I said. So if you are actually choosing a text and you want to give it a typeface, it's the same thing as when you want to give it a font family. Okay, so we know what typefaces are and what font families are. Now, the font family that you or most of you will actually be conversant with should be Times New Roman if you have ever used Microsoft Word. Yeah, that's it. If you've ever used Microsoft Word, you definitely have come across font families, okay? And over there, it's majorly Times New Roman that most people use in making their text, but there are also other font families that are there, okay? So it's the same thing as what we have here, okay? Now, the list of font families, if you click on this drop down here, you are going to see a lot of font families here, like it says on this label that says all fonts. So these are all the fonts that we have here right now, okay, in Figma for you to use. So you can, these are different font families that you can actually use when you are coming up with text. Okay, so take note of that. Now, for UI design and for graphic design, okay, there are different types of font families that are used for these particular design interfaces. So if you are designing a website, for example, and then you are designing a regular flyer or a wedding card, you will not be using the same font family across all of them. Now, if you try to remember, you realize that for most wedding cards, we have text that are usually looking very stylish, okay, sharp edges, okay, the letter Y is longer at the tips, right? So that is a particular typeface. Okay, that's the typeface or font family that is majorly used for wedding cards. Okay, if you remember any website, you get to realize that there's nothing, for most websites, there's nothing really stylish about it. It's just plain for you to just read and get the message. All right, then for graphic design, it's usually a mixture of a normal or plain text and then very stylish text. So the question becomes, if you are trying to make a design, okay, because right now you are in the bootcamp, we're treating both graphic design and we're treating UI UX design. So if you are trying to make a design, how do you decide or how do you choose a typeface or a font that is actually suitable for that particular design? Now the answer to that question would then be, you should have the ability to actually classify font families into categories, okay? So with that being said, now we are going to look at the classification categories that we actually have for typefaces, and that's where we are going to look at divisions of font families. Now, there are other divisions of font families. Generally, I think there are about 5 of them, okay? But we are going to actually focus on those that we are going to be using in our actual design process in the bootcamp. So for font families or typefaces, here in this bootcamp, okay, we'll be talking about 2 major categories, which are the serif font families and the sans-serif font families. So these are serif fonts or serif font families, and these are referred to as sans-serif font families. Okay, they are just opposites. Sans here means without. So you understand that in a couple of minutes. Now, for the serif font families, what differentiates them, okay, from these other families that are referred to as the sans-serif font families? Well, the differentiating factor there is that I think the major difference is serif fonts have small decorative strokes or fits at the end of the letters. Now, what do I mean? Let's take this text, right? Let's make a copy of this. Now, I don't want to put in Times New Roman there. Let's put in the word typography again. Okay, fine. Let's bring it over here. All right. So now we have 2 different texts, right? Now, what I want to do is, these families that are here, they are classified under the serif fonts. These other ones that are here, they are classified under the sans-serif fonts. So what I'll do is, I'm going to put this text in a serif font family, and I'll put this text in a sans-serif font family so we can see little differences if there are differences. So while this is selected, I'll simply come over here. Let's try Times New Roman and see if we have that here in the font family in Figma, right? So is that text selected now? Let's select that again. Okay. Let me select the text inside of it. All right. Now, coming here now, you can see right now what is selected is Inter, right? So that is under sans-serif. So we are going to leave this exactly the way it is, because Inter here too should be under sans-serif. Okay, Inter should be under sans-serif. So we'll leave that exactly the way it is. Now we're going to change this to a serif font. So I'll come over here, select, let's put in Times New Roman there. Okay, simply means that we don't have that here. Okay, let's try another font. Let's try Georgia. Now, it's very possible for you not to have some font families here in Figma. What you can do is that you can actually download and install those font families from font directories. And we are going to talk about that in a couple of minutes. I still can't find that here. What about if I should try, do I have Merriweather here? All right, I have that here. So I'm just going to select that. Now, so under the serif fonts, I've chosen a font family, which is this. Then under the sans-serif fonts, I've chosen a font family, which is Inter, and I've applied it to these 2 texts, okay? So this will stay under serif. and this will stay under sans-serif. Now we are going to zoom in a bit and then try to actually see the differences between them. So if you come over here and zoom in, you can realize that for the letter T, look at the edges. You can see that this part here is actually stylish, okay, and it's sharp and stylish, right? Look at letter Y, the end parts, they are sharp and stylish. The vertices, you can see that they're actually sharp and stylish, okay. The same thing with letter G, the same with letter P, the same with letter H. So this is under serif. Okay, now those sharp points or these extensions that are coming out, they are called fits or serif. All right, so that's what we mean by what we say serif. Those are actually the decorative strokes that we are talking about. They are called fit or serif, and they're usually at the end of the letters. Now let's take a look at these other text that I have here. Let me remove these panels. Now you can see that for this text, the letter T is just plain. You can see that there is no stroke at the end of the text, right? I think I should bring the other text close to it so to make for easy comparison. Okay, so you can see over here that the letter T at the end, it has no decorations. So, okay, it has no strokes, which simply means it has no serif, unlike this one that we have here, right? Then look at the letter Y. Look at these ends here. They are just what? They are just there. There's no style. There's no style applied to them, unlike this one that we have here. Okay, the same thing with the letter P. Okay, you can see that the bottom here is just plain. It's just neutral, unlike this one that we have here, right? So these ones here are said to have strokes or serif, and these ones here are actually without strokes, or you can see that they are without what? Without serif. Okay, so that's what I mean by serif and sans-serif. Serif are those with strokes, while sans-serif are those without what? Without strokes. So that's just it. So we have two classifications here. We have serif fonts, okay, which are those with strokes, and then we have sans-serif fonts, with sans meaning without. So this could be interpreted as without serif fonts, okay, which means without what? Without strokes. Okay, now at this point, if you notice, while we're trying to actually look for the font families of some of these text here on the properties panel, we realize that we didn't have Times New Roman here. We realize that we didn't have Georgia here, right? So a task that will be given after the end of today's class is going to be you installing a font on your Figma that is actual that didn't come with it. Okay, so you are going to install one of these fonts here. Okay, you could decide to install Times New Roman or Georgia or any one that is actually not here right now, or maybe by the end of the class we're actually going to choose one and then decide which of them everybody should just install. Okay, so that's for that. Now, like I said, the question we are looking at is if you are working with graphic design and then you are working with UI design, which of these font families should you be using? Okay, you don't have to put these font families in your head. Okay, there's no point putting them in your head. It's actually a systematic way to actually get them when you need them. Okay, now if you are working with graphic design or UI design, okay, since you are dealing with product design, when you are working with each of these, which of them are you going to be using? Well, if you are working with web design, let's say you are designing for mobile devices, you are designing websites, you are designing products, you are designing for screens generally. For screens generally, what we use are sans-serif fonts. Okay, we use these sans-serif categories here. There is no need for you to be using fonts that are too decorative. Okay, just want the purpose of actually putting text on the screen is just for users to come in, get the value of the content and leave. Okay, you don't want to actually distract users with the stylishness or design of the text. Okay, so that's why for mobile devices, or if you are designing for screens generally, we use what? Sans-serif fonts, which are these fonts here. So we use plain text. Okay, we use neutral fonts for what? For mobile devices. Then if you are working with graphic design, okay, in that case you are going to have a mixture. You can use any of them or both of them together. Okay, so for graphic design we use both serif and sans-serif fonts depending on the style and message or medium of the project. Okay, like I was saying, now if you try to remember wedding cards, for those ones, for that category of graphic design, most of the text used, they are very, very stylish. So most of them are basically just serif fonts over there. Okay, now in some other designs there's a mixture of both of them. For graphic design, you can use a combination of both of them. So that is for that. Now, with that being said, we are going to look into another section of our class that talks about weight values. Okay, another section of text design that talks about weight values. Now, I'll take this and I'll bring it down here and I'll zoom in a bit. Now, when you actually come up with a text on the canvas, let's say, okay, let's say I come over here and I put in a text on the canvas. Let's say Figma. Okay, let me zoom in on that. Now, aside from, because now we are dealing with the properties of text, okay, and now we are looking at weight values. Okay, and weight values also refers to the heaviness or boldness of your text. How heavy should your text be? How bold should your text be? Now, if you come over here, of course, this tab here is for what? Is for changing the font family, and which we now know that among those font families there, we are just grouping them into two. Okay, serif and sans-serif. Now, this is not me saying that font families are just grouped into two, but for what we are going to be using practically, we'll be using just serif and sans-serif. So that's for that. Now, if you come to this other section here, this section here, you can see that by default now, there's a text here that says black. Okay, so let's click on this, on that drop down there. And clicking on the drop down, you can see I have the option to choose extra light, the option to choose light, regular, semi-bold, bold, or black. So if I choose extra light, let's see what happens. Okay, you need to have the text selected. So I'll come over here now. I'll choose extra light. Let's see what happens. And you can see that this text is now looking what? It's now looking really thinned out. Okay, it's now looking very, very thin. Now, if you come back and then you pick light, you see the heaviness or the thickness of the text is actually what? Increasing as you go from top to what? To bottom. Okay, so there's extra light, it's light, there's regular, which is what we use most of the time. There's semi-bold, there's bold, and then there's what? There's black, right? So that's for that. Now, if you look down, you're going to realize that now for the weight values, these are actually the main weight values that we have for this font family. Take note, the number of weight values you have here depends on the font family that you are working with, right? Now, for this case, let's see the font family of this text. The font family of this text is what? Titanium Web. Now, I'm going to make a copy of this text and I'll bring it down. And then I'll change the font family to, say, a sans-serif font family called Roboto. Okay, and now select that. So now you can see that the typeface here and here, they are not the same, right? So now if I should select this, okay, and come over to this section that talks about the weight values, if I click on the drop down, you can see that we have more options here to choose from. Okay, let's select the previous one. Let's see how many options we have there. So if I click on that drop down, I just have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, I'm actually excluding these italic variations. We'll talk about them soon. So these are just 6 here. All right, if I should click on that of Roboto, you can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so I have 9 different weight values to choose from. So the number of weight values that you have actually depends on the font family that you are actually working with. Okay, so just take note of that. Now, there's a general rule that if you're actually picking or choosing font families, it's actually better for you to go with font families that have weight values here that are at least up to 5. Okay, so if you pick a font family and then you come to this section and then you are seeing just 2 or 3 weight values, it will be better for you to choose or select another font family that will give you more options. Okay, so that's for that. So going back to the previous one that we had and then checking the weight values, we have extra light, we have regular, we have semi-bold, we have bold, and then we have black. Okay, now below it you are going to have italic variations of all what you have here. Okay, it's actually the same effect. The only difference is that the word will now be in italics. Okay, so if I come over here and select this, okay, it's going to now be extra light, but in what? Italic. So if I select it, I need to select the old text. Remember to select the old text before you actually put in the effect. So you can see now, okay, if I select extra light, you can see it's just a regular text. If I select this, it's now extra light, but in italics. The same with every other one here. So what you just have here are just italic variations of the ones you have at the top. Okay, so I believe that's clear for weight values, talking about the thickness, heaviness and boldness of text. Okay, now there's a reason they are called weight values. They also have these weight values like extra light, regular, semi-bold, bold, black, and other variations. They actually have numerical weight values assigned to them. For numerical weight values, 100 represents thin, 200 is extra light. So this has a value of 200, 300 is light, 400 is regular, just like that. So you don't have to put the values in your head, okay? You can actually just get them from Figma. So where do I get them? If I should select this text, for example, and then I go into, come over to where you have this icon that says type settings, click on it. Once you click on it, you are going to, this menu is going to come up with 3 labels here: basic, details, and variable, right? So let's just go over to this since we're talking about weight values. Talk about this other two in a couple of minutes. If I should click on this, you can see that this slider has come up, okay? Now, for this slider below it, you can see the label assigned to it says weight, and right now it's set to what? 200, and that is for what? Extra light. It simply means that extra light has a value of what? 200. Now, for regular, the weight value should be 400. Okay, so if I come here and put in 400, if I click on enter, this should change to regular. So this is me clicking on enter. You can now see it's what? Regular. So you can use this drop down here to actually change the weight values like we did. Or you can come here and then just change it using the weight slider here. Now, but there's a little more advantage to having this slider than just changing the weight values here. What's the advantage? And it's because of the advantage that we actually have this slider here. There are times when you want to choose a weight value between, let's go to the weight values now. No, we have thin here, then we have extra lights next to it, right? And then after extra light there, we have lights and then regular, just like that. Now, what if I want to choose, let's say I'm making a design and I want to choose a weight value between regular and medium. I want something in between these two values. What do I do? Because this is now 400, this is 500. What if I want a weight value of 450 in between 400 and 500? Now, you can't get it from here, but you can get it from the sliders. Okay, you can just come over here now. If this is 400 and this is 500, and let's say you want a weight value of 450, just come over here, click on that section and type in 450. Okay, and then you have a weight value in that particular thickness that we have there. Okay, so that's just the advantage of this particular slider that we have here. Now, for the slider at the top, this is actually just to make your characters. It controls the width of your characters. Okay, so if you want to make them wider or you want to reduce the width, you can use this slider that we have here. So if I select this slider and then you can see now that the width is reducing. If I go back, the width of each of the characters is actually what? It's actually increasing. Okay, so this is just to control the width. Now, you may never use this in the bootcamp or in the design as we are going through it, but then you're somebody that wants to actually look at creating logos, like text logos, right? You may want to actually use this. Okay, but it's actually good that you have been introduced to it. So that is that for weight values. So I'm going to take this out and then we are going to move into aligning text in Figma. Okay, so let's look at how we can do text alignment in UI or when we are working with graphic design. Now, for text alignments, there are 3 ways to align text whenever you create the text. Now, in order for us to really look at this, it's better we bring in a design, right? So I'm using this now for text alignment. Let me just take a copy of this and bring it here. Somewhere here. Okay, then I'm going to use this design to explain how alignment actually works. So now let's say you create a text, right? Now you can see that over here we have a text here that says UI UX design, and then we have a description text here that talks about the heading we have at the top. Okay, now there are actually 4 ways you can actually align your text. Okay, there's left alignment, center alignment, right alignment, and justified alignment. Now, generally, alignment has a relationship with language in the sense that for English language and most other languages, we read from left to right. Okay, so since we read from left to right, which is from here to here, from left here to right, so we read in this direction. Okay, left to right, left to right, left to right. For that reason, most of our text are usually aligned left. Okay, because we actually read from left to right. Now, there are some languages that are actually written from right to left. Okay, so in those languages, they read from right to left. I can't actually give a specific one right now, but you can check and you realize that there are languages where you actually read from right to left, and because they also write from right to what, to left. So that is why we have center alignment left and a lot of other alignments. Okay, now for if you make a text, how do you determine the alignment of that text? How do you determine the alignment of that text? Now, in order for us to do that, what I'm going to do is, let's assume we don't have this, okay? And then let's create dummy text. So to create dummy text now, I need a text box. So let me just click on Detaching, open, create a text box, and then put in some dummy text there using Lorem Ipsum. All right, so I'm going to make this say 2. Let's have 2 sentences there. And then I'll click on generate. So now I have something like this, right? Now, if you look at this text now, come to this section. Now that this text has been created, come to this section where it says typography. Now under it, we are going to see these symbols here. Okay. Now, if you hover on this one, it says left aligned. And right now, that's what is selected. It simply means that this text is already left aligned. Now, for us to see the variations, I'm going to make a copy of this in 3 places. Okay, 2 and then 3. So where this is selected, it says left aligned, right? Now, this next option here says align center. So I'm going to apply that to this. I'll select the text and then I'll click on align center. Okay, and we'll see how it is. This next one says align right. So I'll select the text. Now click on align right. Then I'll see how it is. Now let's look at the differences between the text that is left aligned, center aligned, and then aligned to, with one aligned to the right. For this text here that's actually left aligned, you can see that it's actually coming from what? From the left edge and then going to the right. Okay, so I have Lorem Ipsum and all this written here from left to right, left to right. Cool. Now let's look at this one that is center aligned. You can see that all the lines of text, which are this first line, this second line, and this third line here, you can see that they are arranged in such a way that the text is sitting at the middle of the text box. So in that case, we say it is center aligned. Now for this one over here, now another difference is that the moment you are done with one line of text, for left alignment, when you want to begin, you go to the left and then start writing again. The way you want to begin again, you go to the left for the next line and then you start writing till you have a stop, okay, which is what we have here. For center alignment, it starts from the center, okay, and expands to the left and right. For example, what do I mean? Let me take this out. Let me start typing in something here. See, it starts from the center, all right, and expands. So if I click on enter to the next line also starts from the center. If I click on enter, it also starts from the center. Okay, so that's what I mean by center alignment. So for left alignment, it always starts from the left to the right, left to right. Center alignment always starts from the center, and the next line will always be at the center. Okay. Then for right alignment, in this case now, you can see it's starting from the right and it's coming this way. Okay. So this is what we mean by left, center, and right alignments. So these are the 3 alignments that we usually use though in many designs. There is also a justified alignment, but we are going to look at that pretty soon as we move on in this class today. So let's let that be for alignments first. Let's try to align this text in this particular card into the 3 types of alignments that we've talked about now. There's another alignment we're going to talk about, but let's start with these 3. Now, more often than not, texts are easier for us to read because they are left aligned. I won't just say they are easier because they are left aligned. I will say they are easier because it's something that we are used to. Okay, so we always read from left to right, left to right. Now, if I should center align this, what's going to happen? Let's see. I put that at the center. You see how this is. If I should right align this, let's see what's going to happen. Now I have 3 different states. Now the alignment of your content or your text determines how easy it is to read. Okay, and being easy to read is an example of user friendliness. So it determines how user friendly your content is actually going to be. Now, you would agree with me that of all the three alignments we have here, 1, 2, and 3, the one that is looking good, okay, subjectively to you should be this, because this is actually what you are used to. Okay, and even in the layout design, this is actually looking better than any of the other two here. So that being said, left alignment actually has no rules. Okay, there are no principles where you want to actually left align any text. Okay, all you just simply need to do is left align it, and it will be easy to read because people are already used to reading from left to right. Okay, using left alignment. Now, there are times where you want to do a center alignment as well. Okay, there are times when you want to do a center alignment. Now, if you want to do a center alignment, you should know that anytime you want to align text to the center, you should make sure that you don't align more than 3 lines of text. Otherwise, the alignment starts looking awkward. Now, what do I mean by you don't align more than 3 lines of text? And the next question becomes, what is a line of text? Okay. Now, remember we talked about baseline at the beginning of today's session. Okay. So if I should extend this to, let's say, this point, let me bring this down. I have only one baseline, which simply means I have only 1 line of text. Now, if I should wrap this text, now this is called wrapping. Wrapping simply means creating more lines of text. I created 2, I keep wrapping it, I create 3. Now you can now see that I now have 4 lines of text. I think it should be 5 here now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have 5 lines of text. Okay, so that's what I mean by a line of text. Okay, so this is a line of text, this is a line of text. Now, if you want to align, if you want to do center alignments, and because right now we're talking about text structure and principles when you are dealing with UI design, okay, because we are going to treat text as it relates to UI design first before we treat it as it relates to graphic design. So generally for UI design, if you want to actually align text to the center, the general rule is do not align more than 3 lines of text to the center. Now the reason is because if you align more than 3 lines of text, it becomes more difficult to read. Now this right here now is actually difficult to read. Now the reason is because another rule comes in that says if you are aligning text to the center, try to align every text in that particular card or layer to the center, which simply means that this will make more sense if this is aligned to the center, which it is, and then if this is aligned to the center. So let me select this and try to bring it to the center, and let's see if it's going to be looking better. Now before I do that, I'm going to make a copy so we can compare the new and the old. Okay, so let's make a copy of this and bring it here, and then I want to select this and align it to the center. Okay, then I have something like this now. Now, if you look at these two, okay, now the rule says if you are aligning text to the center like this, the heading should also be aligned to the center, okay, and then the same with whatever you have on the card like we have here. The reason is because if you decide to actually align this to the center, then align this to the left, you realize that when you want to read the content of this card, you actually, for this one, fine, you're reading from left to right, okay? And then when you come over here, it's as if you are transitioning from one alignment to the other. Do you understand? So it becomes awkward because in this section, you are reading along a center alignment. So once you read from here to here, when you are done, you are coming back here. You're not going to the very edge. Do you understand? So you are actually reading along the center alignment. So it's actually better if all the contents of the card are center aligned. Okay. So over here, this will be a better design. Okay, as opposed to what we have here. So take note of that. So that's for left and center alignments. Left alignment has no restrictions whatsoever. It looks good in every situation. Center alignment looks good on the condition that the text content that you are aligning like this, for example, does not exceed 3 lines of text. Okay. Now, if I decide to actually put in more lines of text, let me copy this. Ctrl C, and then let me paste it here. Now you can see that this is actually looking worse than when it was like this. Okay, now the reason is because when it's short, there is this aesthetic appealing effect that it has, and it makes it easier to read. Unlike when it's more than 3 lines of text, it's now looking scattered. So in a situation like this, it's actually best to just left align it. All right, select everything and just come over here, left align it. That will be easier to read as opposed to when we have something like this. Okay, so left alignment is always cool. Okay, no issue with left alignment, but center alignment, you need to actually follow some rules. So you can create an interface that is user friendly. So that's for that. Now, what about right alignment? Well, since everyone is actually used to left alignment or in some cases center alignment, right alignment is not really used for text, okay, for UI design, like generally, okay, because of course lingua franca is English majorly. So if you are designing most websites and you want it to be global, you have to put it in English so that anybody anywhere can read and get the content of your website. So where do we use these right alignments? You can use them if you are creating tables. Let's say you are making a UI design where you have tables with numbers like this. Okay, in that case, you should right align the numbers and not left align them. Now, the reason is because check this one that is left aligned here. Okay, if you check the value here, for example, this is 174.72. Okay, now if I'm coming down, there's a distortion in the placement of the decimal points. Okay, you can see that this decimal point has shifted this way. Okay, if you are coming down again, this one is shifting this, so it's creating inconsistency. But if you actually right align it, you are going to realize that all the decimal points like this, you can have them in just one consistent position, as you can see here. So I know that every single number behind these points, both from the top to the bottom, is actually just a fraction, as you can see here. Okay, so you have more consistent UI, okay, right aligning numbers than actually left aligning them. So over here now, you can see that everything here is actually what is right aligned, and you can see that all the decimal points are just along one consistent line. Okay, unlike here, what we left align them and everything's just scattered. Some are to the left, some are to the right, and just like that. So this is where a situation where you can apply right alignments. Okay, so that's for that. That's for that. All right. So now that we've seen this, we now know where to apply left alignment. We now know where to apply right alignment. And then we now know where to actually apply center alignment. And of course, the rule we should follow when we are looking at center alignments. Okay, now the next thing I want us to look at is auto settings. Auto settings. There is something that we might have noticed while we're creating text, and that thing should be, I say there are two ways to create text. So if you create a text the normal way and then just click on the text to click on the empty canvas and put in a text, let's just say should I put in a word, or let me just say typography. Okay, let me just put in something random, right, so we can be faster. All right, I've created this text now. Then if you click on the empty canvas, you have the text created, right? Now you can see that by default, the text box is already hugging the content. And if I keep typing, you can see that every action I take on my keyboard, the text that is being created is just going to the right. Okay, and this is because when you create a text like this, Figma has already given it a default typesetting, okay, of automatic width, which is called auto width for short. So now that I still have this text selected, come over here under layout. You can see that we have three options here. We have auto width, which is automatic width, auto height, and then fixed size. Okay, so right now one of them is selected. Which one is selected? Auto width is selected, which simply means that the more I keep typing inside this text box, the more the width of this particular text box will begin to increase to the right. Now, if I don't want that, what can I do? I can select the next one, auto height. Okay, now if I select auto height, let's try to see what happens when I type. Okay, let me type in something and see. You can see what happens. Okay, once it gets to that edge, it doesn't go beyond the edge again. Now, the reason why it's getting to this edge is because we changed the typesetting when it was already this length. Okay, but now if I keep typing, what's going to happen is that all my texts are just going to be going vertically, which has given it the property of an automatic height. So the height will just be increasing and increasing and increasing. That's what auto height does. Now, if I zoom out a bit and then click on auto width, let's see what happens. Everything becomes along a straight line. Okay, so let me Ctrl C that. So that's just the difference between auto width and auto height. Now, what about if I click on this one that says fixed size? Now, what's going to happen is that the size of this box now will be fixed. And if I keep typing inside this box, it's not going to increase in terms of width or height. Instead, the text is going to actually just overflow. So anytime you are using text and you have something like this, okay, just know that it is set to what? To fixed size. So take note of that. Now, how do you fix this situation? Because this is actually now an overflow, okay? And when you select a text and you see that some part of the characters of that particular text are outside the text box, what you have is an overflow. So it is not desirable to have an overflow. You don't keep a text like this, okay? This is a wrong way to actually design a text. So what you want is that the text box should always cover the text. It should always be around the perimeter of the content. So you should always cover it. So what you want to do is that you want to hold this and then drag it to the bottom, okay? But now, as if I'm dragging it to the bottom now, which looks good, you can see that I don't really know where I should stop it, okay? Because should I stop it here or should I stop it here? Now, this is not looking very fine. What if I should stop it somewhere here? It's looking cool a bit, okay? But what you should do is, instead of dragging this manually, okay, I will Ctrl Z now to go back to what we had before. Instead of dragging that manually, you can see that in moving this downwards, I'm moving along the height, right? So instead of dragging it manually, you can just come over here and click on auto height. Okay, just come over here, click on auto height, and you're going to see that automatically it is now hugging the content, okay, in the exact distance that it's supposed to be, unlike you dragging it manually. And even if you take it out, okay, you can still come back here and click on auto height, and it's going to go back to the exact normal way that it's supposed to be. Now, another reason why this feature is there is if you create a text using a text box, for example, let's put in dummy text there. Lorem Ipsum. All right. I'm going to put in, okay, just 2 sentences. Okay. Now I have this. If you create a text using a text box, now you are done. You can see now that the text box that you've drawn is way bigger than the content that you wanted, okay? So what you can simply do is that if you are done, in this particular case, just come over here, click on auto height, and then you have that, okay? The same thing happens when this is wider. Now, in this case, now we're dealing with width, right? So come over here, click on auto width, and you have that. So if you have, what am I trying to say? If you create a text and then you have an empty space along the width direction, you click on auto width to actually get it hugged. If you have the empty space along the height direction, you click on auto height to actually get it hugged. So right now, if I want to collapse this section, I will simply click on auto height, and then collapse this section, I'll click on auto width, and then I have the text in the way I'm supposed to have it. So that is the major thing you should take note of when you're looking at auto settings in terms of auto height and auto width, okay? Now, we are supposed to look into text structure and spacing guidelines, but before we look into that, let's look at more type settings that we have. Let's look at more type settings. If there's any question up to this point, of course, you can drop your questions, right? If you guys have any questions up to this point, you can drop your questions and then we'll be treating them one after the other. Okay, if I create a text like this, like I told you, you can decide to wrap the text. How do you wrap the text? Just go to the edge, okay, over on it, and you have the ability to just select that edge there and then drag it till you have different lines of text. Okay. Now, before we talk about type settings, there is something I feel I omitted, but we are going to talk about it now. Okay. Once you create text like this, because when it is in this form, you have no problem, okay? You can easily just read it. So in this form, nobody's really bothered about the line heights. Okay, you can just simply read it. Now, what if my text is in this form, okay? And then I make this bold, for instance. Change the weight to bold. Where can I change that now? Okay, I think this came with something. Change the weight to black. Okay, which is still fine. What if I increase the size to, let's say, 40. You can see what's happening now. The texts are like they are overlapping on each other. Okay. Now there is a property that is referred to as line height when you're working with text. Now, line height only comes up when you wrap a text, because for you to have line height, you have to be looking at 2 or more baselines, because line height simply refers to the distance between baselines. Now you can see that I have one line of text here, which is one baseline. I have another line of text here with another baseline. I have another line of text here, just like that. Okay. The distance between this line of text, or better still, the distance between this baseline and this baseline, is referred to as a line height. It's the same distance between this baseline as this baseline is referred to as line height. So line height is just distance between successive baselines. So if, for example, I have text that's probably they are too spaced out, let me assume that the spacing between this line and this line is too much and I want to reduce it. All you need to do is select the text, right? But better still, now that the text box is selected, let me just select the text box and come over here to where it says line heights. Okay, so I'll simply come over here and I'll change. You can see there's a value here now, line height. Now you can actually, I think more often than not, Figma gives you the line height, sets it to auto. Okay, so if you are working with your own text for practice, you might see here as auto. Now, anytime Figma sets it to auto, it simply means that it's automatic. It simply means if you are changing the size of this text, Figma will be changing the line height for you. So there's no need for you to bother about it. Okay. Now, even when Figma puts in a label there that says auto, you can actually see auto simply means that Figma has assigned the value to it. So if you want to know the automatic value that Figma has given to it, all you need to do is come in here and just click on that text once. And you can see that you can see a gray looking text there, which is in my case 24 pixels, right? So at this point, the line height is 24. Now, if you don't want to use that of Figma settings, you can also put in your line height. I can decide to put in a line height of, let's say, 10. And let's see what happens to this particular text. The moment I put in 10 and I click on enter, you can now see that the text are now looking compressed and they are more difficult to read. Okay, so line height is important in the display of your text. It enhances readability. It makes it possible for one line of text to actually be differentiated from the next line and to be read very easily. So this is more difficult to read now. So what you can do is you can come over here and then change the line height from, let's say, 10 to, let's say, 25. Okay, and you see that this is easier to read, because sometimes when you have very long lines of text, you know that if you read from left to right and then you want to come to the next line and they are looking like this, okay, it's very possible for you to actually miss the next line and then start reading from the third or fourth line. Okay, that happens mostly when you are reading books and the lines of text are just too much, or they're just too long. Okay, and you realize that you skipped a line, because in that particular case, the line height is not actually optimized, okay, for that particular line of text. So now you know what line height is. Now let's look at another property, which is letter spacing. So we've treated under typography now, we've treated font family, which is this. We've treated weight values, which is this. We've not treated this section. We've treated line height, and now we want to look at what is referred to as letter spacing. If you create a text, let's say, all right, I'll click on enter. I'm going to make the text bold. So, all right, let's do something like this. Now, if you create this text, okay, let me make a copy of this and put it here. In this case, I'm going to make only the first one. I'm going to keep the others as lowercase. Now, let's start with this. If you create this text, there's actually a spacing between the characters of the text. There's a space between letter M and letter A, and that of A and N. Okay, so the space between each of the letters is referred to as what? Letter spacing. So if I come over here now, right now it's set to 0.5 pixels for my own type settings here. I come over here and just change this to, like, let's say 10 pixels. And you can see I have more spacing between the letters. So that's for that. Now, more often than not, the designers of the typeface, okay, have already sorted out the letter spacing for you. So you really won't be changing letter spacings when you're working with text, especially when we are creating our design system, typography system, and the rest. There won't be any need for you to be editing the letter spacing. Okay, but there will be times where you need to actually edit the line height, because the line height is something that depends on two major factors, which includes the paragraph width or the line of text, and then the size, the font size of the text. Okay, and that's what we are going to look at in a couple of minutes. Now let's look at how line heights but affects things like the line of text and then the font size. Okay, now in order for us to look at that, we need to know that the line heights, okay, line height of your text is affected by two things, or sometimes it depends on two things, which are the font size and then the line length or paragraph width. Now, if for example you have a text like this, you can see in this case we have different lines of text, right? And for these different lines of text, you can see that reading from left to right can be stressful because, of course, this is a very long line of text. Okay. Now, since this is a very long line of text with a lot of characters, now sometimes in trying to come over to the next line, you may actually miss it. Do you understand? So for that reason, you need to watch out for the line height of this kind of text. Okay. So take note of that. The longer the line, okay, the longer the length of the line of text, the more line height that you should have. Because what that simply means is that if you have more like long lines of text or wide paragraphs like this, they should have spacing in between them. Okay, that should make them readable. That's just what it means. So the longer the line of the text, the more what? The more line height that you should have. Because if the spacing between them is too small, you are going to have a problem. You understand? Because when you read from left to right, you might just miss the next line and start reading from the third line. So that is situation number one. That's why line length or paragraph width affects what? Line height. Another thing is font size. Font size. Now, for us to explain font size, we're actually going to create a text here using Lorem Ipsum. Okay, I think I missed that just now. All right, I have it. I'll come over here and then just put in some dummy text. In this case, I won't be putting in 2 sentences. To be putting in, let's say, let me make that 5. Okay, or even 10, since we now know that we can actually edit it if we have an overflow. Okay, this is us now having an overflow, right? So we can simply come over to auto height. Okay, in this case, this is a height. So you don't go and click on auto width, nothing is going to happen. But you come over here, click on auto height, and you have the entire content held. So now I have this. Now reading this text here is actually feasible even if they are very close to each other. Now we've talked about how paragraph length affects the line height. Okay, the longer the length of the paragraph or the longer the line of the text, okay, the more line height you should give to it, which simply means the more space. Then if you are working with text, for example, if this text I reduce the size from, let's say, 12 pixels to, let's say, 5, right? Now, and then I want to take a copy of this and then bring in another, which is now give 12. Now you will agree that these texts here, they are easier to read, okay, as compared to this text here, especially if these lines of text were longer than this. In what sense? Let's extend this. Let's bring it here. Now you can see that this is much harder to read, because if I'm reading from left to right, the text size is so small that if I'm coming to the next line, I may actually miss. Now in this case, we're not considering the length of the line now alone. We're also considering the size of the text. Okay, because if I should have this same line of text, for example, and I have it the same line of text, but with the text having a bigger scale or size. Let me make that 14. Okay, so you can see that these two texts here, this and this, they are the same line of text, right? But this is way easier to read as compared to this, even if the line of text is the same. So the line length now is constant. So we are looking at things like the size. So when you have text, okay, like this in smaller sizes, it's actually better to also increase the line height. So in simple terms, when the texts are smaller, you increase the line height. That should actually give more like an inverse proportion, right? Then for the line of the text, the longer it is, the more you should increase the line height. It's something that you will be seeing practically as you are doing your design. So, and that's what I mean by saying that line height is actually proportional. So it increases together with line length, but it has an inverse relationship with what? Font size. Okay, so that is for line height. So you now know how and why you actually need to know how to edit your line height. Okay, so that is for that. And so you know the relationship between line height, okay, and then line length and paragraph width, as well as font size. Now we would like to go to guidelines for choosing a typeface, because in as much as you know that, okay, you now have serif fonts and sans-serif fonts, and you know that, okay, if you are designing for UI and for the web, on screen design, you are taking sans-serif, right? So let's assume that this doesn't really exist anymore. You now know that, okay, you want to face UI design and you're using sans-serif. The next question becomes, which of the font families should you even use? Because there are so many font families, and then you should know which one to select and why you are even selecting, and what are the criteria for your selection. What are the things that you should be looking out for when you want to actually select this particular line height? So it is some of those criteria that we are going to be looking at in a jiffy. Okay, but before we look at those criteria, let's look at some other properties of text inside those type settings. So I'll bring this here, right, and then I'll select the text, and then I'll come over to type settings. So now we know about the font family, we know about the font width, we know about line height, we know the two factors that can affect line height, okay, which are the length of paragraph width and then size of the text. Okay, we know about letter spacing. Okay, and like I told you, I think in our class yesterday, letter spacing is one of the few measurements here that is measured in percentages. Okay, so it can either be measured in percentages or in px. Okay, so right now letter spacing here is 0%. If you type in a number, let's say 20, just the number, and then click on enter, automatically it's in percentages. Okay, I want to convert it to px, I will type in the same 20 and I'll put in px. Click on enter. Now you can see we have different effects. Those different effects that we are seeing here already tells me that 20% and 20px, they are not the same. Do you understand? So that's for that. Now, when it is in percentage, let's say you want to convert to px, how do you do it? Very simple. All you need to do first of all is think about the size of the text. If the size of the text is, for example, 200px, let me actually bring this down to 0 before I explain this. So let's say the size of the text is, say, 200px, right? I think this is set to auto height, and that's why it's behaving like this. All right. So let's say the size of the text is 200px, because this is the text size, now 200px. A letter spacing of 25%, for example, let me make it 25. And a letter spacing of, okay, that's 25px. A letter spacing of 25px and a letter spacing of 25%. Let me just put in 25. I think I'm making a mistake there. Let me remove the px value. Okay. Let me select that again. Trying to take it back to percentages, right? Let me put in just 5 or 3. It's coming as px. Let me put in 3 and look for the percentage symbol. All right. Now it's in percentages. And when it's in percentages and then you try to edit it, just put in the number. It comes back as the original unit of percentage that you gave it. So if it's in px, the same way you put in the number, it comes out as px. So that's for that. Now, I was trying to explain something here, and I gave this a value of 200 pixels for the size, right? Let me select it again and make here 200 pixels. Can I see what's happening here now? Let me just hold and drag and take it up. Okay. Okay. Let's take those text out. Let's create a fresh one without much characters. So I'll just come over here, plugins, Lorem, Ipsum, and then put in, say, just 2 sentences in this case. Then generate. See, it came out like that. Let's change this from black to thin, light. Something's wrong with those texts. Let's change this to 0, 100. All right. Line art wasn't enough, so everything was like they were on one line. So let's take 200. All right. See, I had an issue with the line height just now. Okay, so if you are changing the size of this text, the line height also needs to change. And let me just give you a rule that works more often than not. If you are changing the size of text, okay, because there was a way I was able to easily locate the issue just now. If this text is 200 pixels, now this is not like a law, but it's something that you can use as a guide. If this is 200 pixels, I'll come over here. I can come over here and make my line height 208. Okay, you can be making your line height 8px ahead of or above your size. So if this is maybe 100, let's say 20 pixels, okay, in that case, because when a text is 200 and when it is 20, it will have different line height values. Do you understand? They won't be the same. So in that case, I can come over here because Figma will change it for you in this case. Okay, the moment you remove it from auto, you have to be changing it yourself. So if I come over here and I want to put in a line height value, how do I know what to put? Just make it 8px above the size. So this is 20, I'll just make here, let's say 28 pixels. And you are fine. Okay, so take note of that. So now this is me taking this text back to 200 pixels. And then I'll come over here. You can see now that everything is looking like it's over. All the lines are just overlapping. So this is 200. I can just make it 208. Like I said, it's not a law. It's a simple guide. All right. So the guide says make your line height 8px above your size, your text size or type scale. Okay, that's for that. Now, if I have a size of 200 pixels, for example, okay, and let's say I have my letter spacing as 25%, so 25, and then I put in the percentage symbol. Now, this is what I have, right? Fine. So I'll select this and make a copy and bring it here. What if I have my letter spacing as 25 pixels, 25px in this case? This is what I have. You can see that I have what different display of the text. This is for 25% letter spacing, and this is for 25px letter spacing. They are not the same. Which simply means that 25% and 25px, they are not the same. Okay. So when it's 25%, what does it mean? Or like, what is the if in case you want to know like the conversion rate in px? Well, the percentage here is always expressed as a fraction of the size. Okay. So 25% here means 25% of 200%, and that's 50px. Okay. It simply means that for this one in px, it will either be 25% or 50px. So if I should select this now, for example, and bring it here, okay, and I change here from 25 to 50px, you realize that nothing is going to change. It stays the same because 25, in this particular case now, 50px and 25% for the letter spacing are actually the same. Okay, so in percentages, it's actually just a fraction of whatever you have here. You understand? If here is 100, for example, 25% will mean 25px. Just do 25 off whatever value you have here. So that's for that. So I was talking about us looking into some type settings. So if you select this text, for example, and then you come to this section under typography, okay, we've talked about all this, right? I think we omitted these three alignment properties here, but we'll talk about them soon enough. Okay, now this just talks about the size. Of course, we've been using this. Okay, this is just to change the size of your text. I think my text just disappeared. This is just to change the size of your text, right? It didn't disappear, it got smaller. From 200 to any value. You can just zoom in to see the smaller text if you want to. So this is just for changing the size. So we'll not talk much about that. There's nothing much to talk about it, even if we want to talk much about it. Now, coming here, you can see that there's symbol here. Okay, if I click on it, it gives you more editing options. Now, remember that initially, when we clicked on this, we had basic, we had details, and then we had one other option here, right? Now, what am I trying to say? Sometimes when you are looking at the properties of text, the properties you see depends on the font family that you've chosen. You get? We saw that while we were treating something just now with font families, while we're treating weight values. Okay, the same thing applies to type settings. Now, for this case, this text, now I have titanium web selected. But you select this text and then make a copy of this text and bring it down and go to a more general sans-serif font like Roboto again. Right, and then I come over here and I click on type settings. You can see I have three options here, unlike in this case where I just had two. Okay, so just take note of that. There are times when you'll be coming up with these menus, these context menus, and you are going to be seeing that it's changing actually, so it depends on the family. Okay, so if I click on this icon that says type settings, it brings up a context menu like this for more editing options. Now, the more editing options could include, okay, let's talk about alignments. Now, in this case, if I hover on this is text align left. So that's left alignment, center alignment. You can see the preview here. Okay, center. This is right alignment, and this one here it says text align justified. So this is justified alignment. Okay, like I told you that there are 4. Okay, so what does this do? Now, by looking at these symbols already, when it's left aligned, you can see that all the lines here at the left point, you can see that they are all equal. Like there's no line going inside or into it at the left point here. Okay, when it's center aligned, you have that the line at the top is longer, so every other thing is just what along the center. When it's right aligned, you can see what's happening. But when it's left aligned, what happens is that what happens for left alignment is, for left alignment, for example, look at this text here. You can see it's as if everything here is along the straight line. Okay, while over here it could break. Some lines will be longer, some will be shorter, right? The same thing for center alignment. Okay, the same thing for right alignment. But once you justify a text, everything along here seems to be along the straight line, and everything along here seems to be along the straight line. Let's justify this text and let's see what we have. Let me increase this, then click on auto width to actually hug that contents. Select the text first and then click on auto width, right? So that's for that. Then I'll come over to type settings, and then I can move this, okay, and then click on justification. Now see what justification does, right? You can see that all the text here is as if they are along a straight line, right, at the edge. The same thing on the right, they will be along a straight line. Unlike these ones that we have here, when you are actually using left alignment and then you're reading from left or writing from left to right, you can see that for the next line of text, you can see the text coming out a bit more than this. Can you see that? You see why this one is going in a bit, why this one goes in a lot. So you can see that it's actually just breaking at the edge. But for justification, it's not like that. Everything will start at the same point. Everything will end at the same point. So if I should keep typing in here now, for example, before it goes to the next line, if it's set to auto height, it's going to end at at the same point. And the problem with justification is that you usually have gaps in between the text, right? Inconsistent gaps, as you can see, in between the text. Now there are cases where these justifications are used, but they are hyphenated. They put in a hyphen, okay, so as to connect text together. Now, justification is usually done if for those of you who might have done like a school project and you did look at 1 or 2 research papers, you realize that for research papers, more often than not, their texts are usually justified. Okay, they have this look where all the text, it's as if everything is just vertical downwards. You don't have some coming out, some poking out, or some going in. You understand? So that's what justification simply means. If you click on this and then you come back to type settings, you are going to see a lot of properties here that you can just go through, but we'll just go through some of them. Now you can start to decorate your text, okay? For example, right now it's set to no decoration. I can decide to create a text. I want to underline the text. So you just come over here. I click on this and you see I have all my text underlined. I can decide to create a text, and let's say I want to put a stroke. Let's say you are creating a page that talks about the prices of goods, maybe in a particular UI, and then you want to talk about old price, new price. You want to slash the old price. You can use this and you have this effect, okay? So that's for that. You can also decide to put your text completely as uppercase. They are all, okay, let me remove the strokes. They are all now uppercase, okay? Then you can put everything as lowercase. Okay, you can do normal. This one is called normal sentence case, or in this case, I call it title case, where every first letter is going to be an uppercase, and every other one will be lowercase. You can see it here, right? Every first letter is an uppercase, so just like that. So just like that, you're going to have other settings there. Now, sometimes if you create a text and then let me create a normal text now. Just create something random. Okay. There's something this trim does. I don't know if you are going to see it here now. Let's take this. I don't think that'll work. Okay, let's increase the line height of this to say 20. Okay, nothing happens there, right? What if we increase to 300 and see? All right, we have something like this. I just want to create more space between top and bottom section. I just want to increase the line as, let's try 500. Right, let's have something like this. Now with this, you can see that the look of a particular text, okay, when you see a text looking, for example, let's change this line height back to, this is 200. Let's make it normal 208. Now, if you should select it, you can see that the bounding box here is hugging it, right, in a way that is really comfortable. Then if you look at this, you can see the way it is. So if you have this effect, you just know that this effect is something that comes up based on line height. So if your text is like this, you can easily correct it using the line height. Okay, so that's for that. So your text is supposed to be looking something like this. This is way better than looking like this. These empty spaces here are just void and useless. So if I just select this and I come over to this other property here that talks about trimming, let's just see. If I select it, let's see what it does. Okay. All right. You see what it does? It reduces that space that is there, okay, and makes it all. Do you understand? That's what trimming does. You can actually just see everything that's happening from the preview even without applying it. Okay, so if you select the next one, you see what it does, right? So that's for that. So with that, you can just go into these basic properties, look into a lot of all the editing options that we have there. You can also create list items here. Let's say you are typing and you want to make a list, right? You can come over here and just put, okay, you can create a list item like this when you are typing. So if you want to actually get the next item on the list, go to the edge, just click on enter, and then this symbol comes up again, right? So just like that. You also make list items numbers, maybe 1, then you type in what you want to type in, go to the next one, go to 2, and just like that. Okay, so that's for that. Now this one talks about truncating the text. Now what does truncating means? There are times when, to explain the truncating property, let's just increase this text. What do we do here to actually get this amount of space? Okay, let's take this back to left alignment, right? Okay, let's reduce this a bit. All right, let's bring this here. Let's make a copy. Let me increase it. Sometimes if you want to actually increase your text, if you are dummy text, you can just copy the text that's there and repaste it inside. Okay, no need going to Lorem Ipsum all the time. So let's have this. Now sometimes, at times when you want to create an effect that has to do with letting your user know that, let's say they are reading something on a site, okay, or in any particular interface, and then you don't want to explain everything on that particular section. Okay, you just want to give the user an insight. Okay, you want to give the user an insight into the fact that, okay, we have this particular product, okay, and this is the description of the product. And then you don't want to give the full description, but just a little, but you want to let them know that the description does not end there. You can actually then truncate your text. Now, what does truncating, what does it do? Let's see. If you select the text, I will come over here, I'll click on this truncate here once. Okay, now the moment you click on it, you can see that every other text under it has disappeared. Okay, they are still there, right? They just if I should select this, I can see when I select this text now, I can see everything there. But then they disappeared, and then you are going to have like these 3 dots, letting the user know that, okay, let's say you are making a description of something, there's still more to know. Do you understand? So, but you just want to stop at this point, you can simply just truncate it. And this 3 dots here lets anybody who has that heuristic experience understand that, okay, there's still more to know. And maybe there could be a button under it that the person could click in order for the person to know more about the product. So that's what truncating does. Okay, so that's what truncating does. Now, that's explained. Let's Ctrl Z and then look at some other properties using type settings. Okay, so you can go into, there are a lot of properties here, okay? A lot of properties that you can look into here. So just check them one after the other. Now, these other labels here are just for more, see, indentation, letter case, upper, lower case, putting in numbers. Let's say you're working with, maybe you want to create a superscript, or I think one is called a subscript. Here, I want to create a subscript or a superscript, just like that. Okay, and then we talked about width and width values. We've talked about these width values recently. So these are just panels, or these are just menus, or these are just more editing options for your text properties, okay, as you are working with text in Figma. So that is it for editing text using these type settings that you have here. Now you can go into it and see any other options that we have for text. So I was talking about you choosing a font family. What are the guidelines for choosing a typeface? And in order for us to look at that, we are going to take a lot of these things out. And then we are going to check for guidelines for choosing a typeface. Okay, so let's come over here now. So like I said, you now know that there are serif fonts and there are sans-serif fonts. So let me assume now that since serif fonts are used majorly when I'm working with graphic design, okay, let me assume that I'm not doing graphic design, so let me leave that. Now, sans-serif fonts, which are those without serif, are actually used for UI design. So now, so if I select a text or a typeface and then I come over to the properties panel and I want to select a font family. Now, there are so many. Which font family do I choose? And the thing is, you don't know what font family to choose, right? Now, since you don't know what font families to choose, it therefore means that there has to be something like a guideline for you to choose your typeface. So now we are going to be looking at the general text rules for font selection, and also I've talked about some rules for letter spacing, so we might not talk about that again. So let's just look at the general text rules for font selection. Now, let's say you are designing or you want to design a website and you really do not know the type of font family you want to use there, because obviously you are not a magician, right? You are new to design. Although over time, let's say if you start designing for like 2-3 years, you may start getting used to the fonts that are used in design, but then you don't have 2-3 years just to get used to fonts. So what can you do? The first rule says that you can play it safe, in the sense that people have been designing before you, right? Now, since people have been designing before you can look at what people have been doing, okay? Because one thing about design is that, especially when it comes to websites, users are already used to seeing some particular fonts on some particular sites. Do you understand? The same thing, not just website, the same thing applies to normal graphic design. If you see a wedding card and then you are seeing those decorative fonts, you are not surprised. Why are you not surprised? It's something that you are used to seeing. So you will even be surprised when you see a wedding card or those type of cards and you realize that they don't have decorative fonts. Okay, that may look surprising to you because it's not something that you are used to. Okay, so that is what we are trying to say when we say play safe, trust the wisdom of the crowd, rely on the existing system. So since we are dealing with UI and we're dealing with on-screen design, okay, we are going to be looking at the guidelines that we are going to use. You want to design a website, you want to design a product, you want to design an application. How do you know the font family that you are going to choose? The first and actually most effective method is to use a method that is called website inspection. So what is website inspection? You go to the website and then you are going to inspect the site and see the font family that is used on that particular site. So now we are going to go to a website. Let's go to this website over here. Fine. And now what I'm going to do is, now if you go to it mustn't be this website. You can go to any website you like, okay? And then once you get to the website, you right click on any area of the website and then this menu comes up. Scroll down to where it says inspect, okay? And then you click on that. And once you click on that, you have an inspection panel over here that comes up. Now once the panel comes up, come over here and click on this arrow icon here just once. Once you click on it, then come to the website and over on any section of the website. If I over on this part, you can see that the context menu that comes up contains color, font, margin, padding, accessibility, and a lot of other things, right? Now we are here for fonts. Now under font, it talks about the size first of all. So this text is 24px, and then it talks about the font family, which is what? Poppins, okay? And to the right of that, it says sans-serif. Can you see that there? I don't know if everybody can see that, because website inspection is one of the most effective ways if you actually want to know the font family that is used for a particular website. So let's say you want to design a website, because in the bootcamp we'll be treating website design and a lot of things, right? You want to design a website and you are looking for the font family. Now you already know that it's, for most websites, it's sans-serif, right? So now when you are coming, you are not expecting to see something so strange, okay? Even if it's Even if you see something strange, it should be far from what you already know, because you already know that for most websites it's sans-serif. So once you do the inspection, right? Of course, click on inspect, this panel comes up. Click on this just once. And then over, you can over on the headings, and then you can over on the word body text. If you over on the headings here, you can see the font is 24 pixels. That we're not looking at the size here now, we're not bothered about that. We'll treat that later. We're only interested in the font family. So over there it says Poppins and what sans-serif. Okay? So it simply means that in this case, Poppins is actually used. Now, where does Poppins belong in our classification over here? I don't know if we have Poppins here. I think we do. I really don't know. Okay, Poppins is under what sans-serif, right? You can see that there. And even on the site, you can see that behind Poppins there's something written there that says what sans-serif. Okay, so take note of that. So it simply means that, okay, I will explain that briefly, but just know that. Now, if I over on this next text, because in this case now, what I had was body text. So it was the heading. Do you understand? Now this is the body. Okay. Now the body, the font there is what? Lato. Okay. Now where does Lato belong? Let's see. Okay. This is Lato here. I think there was a typo error there. Okay. Lato is still under what? Sans-serif, right? So you can see that this is actually a live site. And like I said, you can do this on any site. So now I've seen that there's something they did here. They didn't just use one particular font family to create this entire website. They used two. They used one for the headings, and they used one for what? For the body text, which simply means that if you want to create a website, you can actually use more than one font family. Okay? But you should use the two font families you should use are those that are used in what? In the design of websites, which simply means they should be sans-serif. Do you understand? So take note of that. So we've actually seen that now, and we've learned something that we can use more than what? More than one particular font family to design a website. We can use one for the headings, then we can use one for what? For the body text. Now, in a couple of minutes, we are going to realize that there are some font families that are designed specifically for headings. Do you understand? There are some that are designed just to be for headings, and those ones should not be used for body text. However, most font families that are used for body text can also be used for headings. Do you understand? Like these Poppins here can be used for both headings and body text. Here they use it for the heading, can be used for both. Okay, this Lato, the same thing. We'll talk about font families that are actually just for headings pretty soon. So that's for the first site. Let's look at the next one, which is Goldwind. Okay, now if I look at this and I come over here, now you can see I still have my special panel here, but in case you don't have it, right, what you can simply do is, as you come to the website, which is something like this, right, click on any region of the site. This panel comes up, click on inspect again. Now you see your special panels here. Click on this symbol just once, and then over on the text. Content menu that comes up, the font is what? Titanium Web, and that is also what? Sans-serif, right? So under sans-serif, we have it here, Titanium Web. Okay, so this already tells you that for most websites, what they use is what? Sans-serif fonts for creation of their websites. All right, so let's look at this little text here. It's also Titanium Web. So this is one way you can actually know the font family that is used in the site. Now, aside from clicking on this little arrow icon here and hovering on that particular text, be it a heading or a body text, another way you can know is once the inspection panel comes up, right, you can simply come over here and scroll down. Now, once you come over here, you're going to see two labels, styles, and this one that says computed. Sometimes you are going to see the font family under styles. Sometimes you see it under this label that says computed. So since this one is already selected, let me scroll down and see. I can see some properties here. Background color. I want to know if I'll see font family. You can see over here, font family is just one, Titanium Web. So that's just it. It simply means that for this site, the font family that is used is just Titanium Web for everything that you have on the site, right? So that's for that. Let's go to the previous site that we had. They used two here, right? So let's come over to the font family and see what we have here. Okay, I'm checking this section now to where I'll see font family. Okay, in this case, I have Lato. All right, but we know that it wasn't only Lato that was used on this site when we're doing the inspection like manually. Okay, we saw Poppins, right, for the headings, right? Yeah, and then we saw Lato here, but on this section, I can see that for the font family here is just Lato, which simply means that this is talking about what? This is talking about the body text. Okay, now this is one way to actually know your font family. Now another way to know your font family, because this one now in this case, just by looking at it here, we couldn't tell if it was using two font families, okay, unless we do the inspection manually. Alright, now another way to know your font family is by using an extension, which is referred to as CSS Peeper. Now, what you can simply do is that it's a Chrome extension. So open a new tab on Chrome. Also open a new tab on Chrome, click on these three dots there for that icon, and then scroll down to where it says extensions. Okay. Now under it, once you over on extensions, this other little list comes up. Click on visit Chrome Web Store. So click on that. Once you click on it, it takes you to this page where you have discover themes and discover extensions and themes. Click on extensions, right? And when the search bar for extension comes up, click on it and look for CSS Peeper. That's it here. CSS Peeper extension. Click on it. So once you click on it, in your own case now, it's going to tell you add to Chrome. Okay. So in my case, it says remove because I already added. So you click on add to Chrome. So once you click on add to Chrome, the next thing you want to know is that once it has been added to your Chrome browser, right? Come to this icon here because this is the, you can see if I over on it says extension. Click on the icon. Once you click on the icon, you are going to see it here as CSS Peeper. So what you can do is that you can pin it to your top menu here. Just click on this pin icon and you are going to see it pinned here. Now, what do we use that for? That's another way for you to actually inspect your website. Let's say I remove this. Okay? And then I come to this website and I want to inspect it. I want to know the font family that is used. I can simply come over here and click on CSS Peeper. Okay? And when it comes up, it gives me an even more accurate description. You see, it says typography. Heading is Poppins. Okay? The body is Lato. Simple. Okay, this is very easy. It also tells me about the colors and some other things we are going to look at later. So first of all, it has given me the typography that is used in this particular website. Letting me know that there are two font families used here, Poppins and Lato. And that's just it. Let's go to another website and then let's remove this. Let's use CSS Peeper. I click on it. Typography, headings, Titanium Web, body, Titanium Web. It simply means that in this case, both the heading and the body is the same is the same font family that is used, which is Titanium Web, right? So take note of that. Okay, that now, but while we're using the inspection tool, after the font family, behind it, we are going to see something that says Sans-Serif, right? And we are going to explain that in a couple of minutes. I hope this inspection method and using this extension has been clear so far. You can decide to use any one you like. Because as time goes on, using one or the other won't really matter. You can just pick any one to use. Okay, but you can be using CSS Peeper since that brings out both the heading and the body and just tells you that okay, this is what is used. So that's for that. So you now know how to actually get the font families that are used for websites. So let's say you are designing a website for a turbine industry. You already know that for turbine industries, I can use Titanium Web. Okay, take note of that. Let's say you are designing this type of website that talks about joint masters in international programs, and you want to design a website like this, and you're wondering what kind of font families you can use. They already tell you that you can use Poppins or Lato. Now we'll talk about font family categories for websites in specific industries later, but this is how you actually get the font families that are used in various industries for now. Okay. Now that I've talked about this, let's go to GitHub. Now sometimes once you come to a particular website, there's a website that you go to and then you want to carry out inspection and then you right click and then you inspect. Once the panel comes up and then you click on this arrow, don't forget to click on this arrow in case you want to, because if I just come here and hover on this text, nothing is going to happen. I can't see anything. If I click on that arrow and I come over to hover, now it comes up. Now under fonts, you can see what it says in this case. 48 pixels, which is the size of this text. Fine. Then the font family which we want to see. There's Mona Sans, then there's Mona Sans fallback, and then there are other things there. Do you understand? It's as if that text has been truncated. Okay? Remember we just talked about truncating. So that text has been truncated, which simply means that there are a lot of other fonts that are actually placed here now. Now, what does this mean? Now, if you come over here to actually want to see it, under font family, it's the same thing here. So how do you see the other fonts that are written here? All you can simply do is hold this. There's a way you can drag this. Okay, extend the inspection bar here, right? And then come over here to this one that has the font family, extend it as well. And now I can see all the fonts that are written here. So for font family, there's Mona Sans, fallback, Apple system, okay, this font, Sogo UI, vertical area, down to sans serif. Anytime you go to a website and you see something like this, now what that simply means, it doesn't mean that it's all the font families here that are used in designing the website. No. Now, this is simply more like a setup. Okay, this setup is referred to as a font stack. It's a font stack. Now, what is a font stack? In web design, as you can see now, but this is a website. A font stack is actually a list of fonts that the website tells the browser to use in order of preference when displaying text. Okay, so it's something that is called font directories. Okay, it depends on devices. So if, for example, this web page wants to open on a device, okay, it's actually going to check the font directory of that device to see if these fonts are what are available. Now, the way a font stack works is that it's first of all going to check for this one, because this one should be the main font, okay, that will be used for the site. Okay, so this will be the main font. We are going to check using CSS Peeper. So this should be the main font, which is Mona Sans, this first one here. Now, what happens is that for this font stack, if the browser cannot get this particular font, what's going to happen is that it's going to move on to try to get the next available font, which is this one here. Now, if this is not available on the operating system, it moves on to try to get the next available one. Okay, it continues like that, and if any of the listed ones here in the font stack are not available, it just defaults to a regular sans-serif font, which simply means in that case, it will just choose any sans-serif font. It could be Roboto, it could be any, just for it to display the content of the website. Okay, so in essence, it's not every font that is available on all operating devices. Okay, it depends on the font directory. By font directory, I simply mean like a folder, because every device has this section where fonts are already installed and stored. Do you understand? Like when we went to Figma just now, there was a font that wasn't there. It hasn't been installed. Okay, so we need to go and get the font, okay, and then put it inside Figma. Do you understand? So that's just it. So where we are getting the fonts from is what we refer to as the font directory, because it stores the font. So what a font stack is just a list of fonts that you can see, okay, that a system has been instructed to use, okay, in preference, just in case one of them is not available based on the operating system. Do you understand? Now, if any of them are not available, automatically the browser will just default to using any sans-serif font. So once you come over here, and in most sites, you are going to see some of them, you may see just one. Maybe you may see Mona Sans, and next thing you see sans-serif. What that simply means is that if the first one is not available, automatically the browser defaults to using any sans-serif fonts. Okay, like for websites, they use majorly sans-serif fonts. So picking any sans-serif font is not an issue, because all of them will not be decorated. There will be normal, plain, neutral text. Do you understand? So that's for that. So if the first font here is not available, what's going to happen is that the browser tries the next one in the list and keeps going until they find the one that works. So that's just that. So you've been introduced to two new terms right now. You now know what a font stack is, and you know that the fonts are gotten from directories, okay, which I refer to as font directories. Okay, so that's for that. For the tasks that you are going to have, you are going to actually download and install the fonts. Okay, you are downloading the fonts from an online directory, which could be Google or anywhere. Then the moment you install the font, you are going to install it in a local directory, which is a local folder on your system. Okay, so that's just what the word directory means. All right, so we now know that, okay, there are some sites you go to, you are going to see a list like this. It doesn't mean that they used all of them. This is just like a directive to the browser, okay, to begin to pick fonts one after the other, just in case the one that was supposed to be selected is unavailable. All right. So I think the first font we saw there just now was Mona Sans. So let's see the font that's actually used in this website right now. If I click on CSS Peeper and it comes up, okay. Now in this case, now it's telling us font family sans-serif, okay, because you see that in this case it's not bringing out the full font stack. So in as much as you can actually use CSS Peeper, okay, you can also use the website inspections so that you can be getting more info, as you can see now. Now you can also inspect different sections using CSS Peeper. All you simply need to do is make sure that this toggle button here is toggled on. Okay, so it's context menu while hovering. It simply means that now that it's toggled on, if I should hover, it should bring out the what? It should bring out the properties for me. So I can see text color, I can see background, font family. You can see there's what Mona Sans. Remember, for the font stack we saw just now, the first one there was what Mona Sans. Okay, now CSS Peeper is not giving us the full font stack. It just says sans-serif, which simply means that all the fonts that were listed in that stack, they were all sans-serif. Okay, so that's just it. So I don't know if this section is clear enough. I hope there's no confusion at this point. Okay, so that's how you actually determine type of, that is one of the best ways you determine the type of fonts that you are using when you are working on a site. Now, even if it's not so clear, although I believe it's clear, but even if it's not so clear, don't worry yourself. When we actually go into website design, we're actually going to look into this again. This is just me practically showing you that sans-serif fonts are used for what? UI design, which is website design. Okay, then if you go to graphic design, you can actually mix serif or sans-serif or sans-serif fonts. So that is one way to actually choose fonts. And another way to choose fonts, okay, is the other property that I told you. Remember that if you select a font and then you come to, because we are looking at the criteria for actually what picking fonts right now. I think we should actually over on them. Okay, where did I keep that now? Okay, so we've talked about looking at what website inspection. Now, another principle says ignore typefaces with less than 5 width values. Okay, so let's say if you go over to, if you select a font and then you come to the width values, because you should be having options here that you can use. We are going to use this extensively once we talk about coming up with typography system in maybe after UX, the UX stage of the design. Now, if you select this particular text and then you come to the width value, you can see that we have a good list here. There are some fonts that you select and then you come to the width values and you might just be seeing thin and black. That's all. You might just be seeing maybe semi-bold, light and thin. That's all. Now this rule or this guide, okay, because it's not a law, this guide is telling us that if you want to select fonts, in as much as, okay, let's say you have 3 options to pick from sans-serif fonts. And out of the 3 options, you want to select one. Pick the one that has more width values. Do you understand? So that you can be having what a lot more variations. So that's just it. So avoid the one that have less than 5 widths. So things like that. So instead of just putting a benchmark of less than 5, just pick the one that has more width values. Simple. But if a font just has like 2 or 3, it's not actually advisable to actually use it because then you will be limited and you would have a lot of options. But if you don't need those options to in your design, you can always pick them, right? That's why it's a guide. So take note of that. Now, another thing we want to look at is when choosing fonts, right, is legibility optimization. Okay. Now, what do we mean by legibility optimization? That becomes the next question. Now, this is where we are going to look at fonts that are good to be used as headings and fonts that are good to be used as what? As body text. So we have headline text and also have body text. Okay. Now, some fonts are specifically designed to be used as headlines. An example is, let's put in this word here, typography. We're in the class here soon, almost 8 p.m. right? As 2 hours class completed. So under typography, if I click on typography, for example, okay, let me put this regular. I want to keep that as black. Let's keep this as regular. Now, some fonts are specifically designed for you to use as headings. Okay, they look better when you use them as headings. Now, an example is Oswald, O-S-W-A-L-D. I don't know if I should have it here now. Okay, all right. Now, the reason is because, let me Ctrl-Z that. The reason is because the typeface is designed in such a way that it looks better to be used as headings than body text. Okay, so that's just it. It looks better to be used as headings than body text. So if I come over here and I pick and I change this to, let's say, Oswald. I'm not spelling that correctly, am I? Alright, so a font family like Oswald is better used as what? You can see it's looking really, let's say it's looking really sleek or looking really okay. So font families like this are used for designing headlines, okay, as opposed to body text. So what am I trying to say? There are some fonts that are just designed, okay. When it was designed, the typeface designer just designed them to be used as headlines. Do you understand? So this is an example of one of them. Now, while there are some where these fonts that you have here, where are those fonts again? These fonts that you have here, right? They can be used as both headlines and as body text. Do you understand? So they can be used as headlines, they can be used as body text. It doesn't really matter. You can use any of them as headlines and body text. However, just know that there are some that are specifically designed to be used as headlines. An example is this. Okay, there are other examples, but as we proceed in the bootcamp, we are going to actually talk about this more. I would like to put a pause to the class today since it's already 8 p.m., right? We don't usually exceed 2 hours. So in tomorrow's class, we are going to look into some of these fonts that are used as headings and why they are used as headlines instead of body text and things like that. If there's any question, the question can come in fractions of seconds before we say goodbye to today's class. In yesterday's class, we looked at typography and text design in Figma. We also looked at editing text and we got introduced to typefaces, otherwise known as fonts or font families. Now, in today's class, we are going to be looking at guidelines for choosing a typeface or font family in UI UX design, or guidelines for choosing a font family in product design generally. Okay. Now, we were introduced to 2 categories of font families yesterday, and we're looking at the serif fonts and the sans-serif fonts, those which add decorations or strokes at their ends or feet, and those without decorations or strokes. So if I know that I have a group of fonts which are referred to as sans-serif fonts, and those are the fonts that are used in UI design, it therefore means that if I want to make a design, I have to choose from a sans-serif font. I have to choose a sans-serif category. But if you come over here to where we have the font families, you can see that there are a lot of families that are here that you can choose from, and therefore there are a lot of families under the sans-serif category. So what are some of those criteria that you should look out for when you want to choose a particular font family? That's what we want to look at right now. Now, in choosing a font family, there are 3 guidelines that you can actually follow. Okay. Now, the 3 guidelines are: the first one says, you know that they've actually been designers in the space, okay, for a very long time, and most of these designers are already using font families that are peculiar to some industries in design. Okay, so the first guideline says that you should play it safe by trusting the wisdom of those who have already been in the design industry. So play it safe in the sense that look at the font families that they are actually using for websites in various industries, whether you are looking at websites in industries such as renewable energy or fashion industry or any other industry. We've already have designers who have been in that field for a very long time, and for that reason, there are font families that they'll be using. So the first guideline says that trust in the wisdom of those who have been designing what's in the space. Now, in trusting in the wisdom of those that have been designing the space, what you want to do is that you want to actually do an inspection. Okay, so and that's what we have here for the first guideline that says play it safe, which means trust the wisdom of the crowd and rely on what is called the system's font stack. When you do an inspection of a particular website, you are going to actually be able to determine the font family that is used in actually designing that website. Okay, the font family or font families that are used in designing the website, because we can actually use more than one font family to design a website like we saw yesterday. Okay, so in yesterday's class, we also introduced to 2 new terms. We're introduced to what we refer to as a font stack, and we're introduced to what we refer to as a font directory. So let us look at those terms before we go into the website inspection one more time. Now, what is a font stack? A font stack is simply a list of fonts or a list of font families that's used in designing a site. While we were carrying out our inspection yesterday, we got to realize that when we got to some websites, we saw that when we got to some websites and we did our inspection, we saw that the font family which they use was actually listed like this. There was one of the websites that used Poppins, and after it, the generic category of that particular font family will be written on to the right of the font family. Okay, Poppins is more like a sans-serif family. Okay, so the way the font stack is arranged is such that the font family that is used to design the website will be written there, which is in this case Poppins, and then the general category that that font family belongs to will also be written, which is in this case sans-serif. Okay, so if it's only one font family that is used to design the website, you are just going to see like we have here Poppins and then the general family. If there are two font families that are used, you may see something like Poppins and then maybe a vertical or Arial, and then before you see the general name. If we have more than 3 or 4, you are going to see all of them. Now, the fact that you actually inspect a site and then you see one font family, 2, and then 3 before the general name doesn't necessarily imply that it was all of them that was used. Okay, the way the system is set up is such a way that the first font family there will actually be the major font family for the website. Okay, so let's say for example you inspect a site and then you see a font stack like this. Now what this simply means is that the font family for the website is Mona Sans. Okay, but then just like when you are using an operating system or a device and you have the ability to choose your language, because we already have languages installed in the operating system, it's the same for font families. Operating systems already have font families that have been pre-installed in them. Okay, so if you inspect a site and then you see a font stack like this, what it means is that the font family for that site is the very first one. Okay, but then if the browser is unable to get this very first font family from the operating system of that particular device, what it does is that it switches to the next font family and tries to see if it can display the contents of the web page with the next font family. Now, if that is also not possible, it then moves to the next. And then if the next one or the next font family is also not available, it just goes to any default sans-serif family and it uses any default one to actually display the content of the site. Okay, so if the first font isn't available on the user's device, the browser tries the next one on the list and keeps going until it finds the one that works. Okay, so that's just it. Now you should know that all the font families are going to belong to one category, which is sans-serif. So automatically all the font families that are listed before it are sans-serif of family. Now this helps to make sure that the text always shows up properly, even if the preferred font isn't available, which simply means even if the first font, which was supposed to be used for the site display, is not available, what's going to happen is that the system is going to choose another font family, which is also a sans-serif family. So therefore, you still have a URL with non-decorative characters or text. Okay, so that's for that. So now you know what a font stack is, right? You know what a font stack is. Now, in order for us to refresh our memory, we're just going to check a site again. Okay, so if I should go to, let's say, I go to this Coldwind site, and then of course you can use website inspection or you can use CSS Peeper, like we actually saw yesterday. Okay, we were actually instructed to install the CSS Peeper extension, right? And how to install it was actually shown in yesterday's class. So once you come to any website, okay, you can click on CSS Peeper, for example, and then go to the text properties, and then you are going to see the font family. In this case, the font family is what? It's Titanium Web, right? So that's for this website. If I go to any other website, let's say I come to this website and then I click on CSS Peeper, you can see that in this case, it's telling me that for this particular site, there are 2 font families that I use. There's a font family used for headings, so all the headings are Poppins, and then there's another font family used for the body text. So all these body text, they have a different font family from the headings. So this is what CSS Peeper is actually telling us now. So if you go to a site and you have more than one font family you use, this is the way CSS Peeper is actually going to display it, letting you know those that are used as headings and those that are used for for the body text. Okay, so just like that. So we've inspected this website, we inspected this one. Let's inspect this using CSS Peeper and let's see. If I click on that, now let's see what comes up. Okay, under text properties, it says font family, and you can see that we have a list of font families here. Okay, the first one is Mona Sans. The other one is Mona Sans fallback. Just like that, till you get to the end of the stack. Now, there are two ways to actually do your inspection. Okay, this is one way to actually inspect the sites. And the second way to inspect the site is you go to the sites and then let's take out CSS Peeper from all the sites. So I'm taking the extension from all the sites. Now, the second way to inspect is that you go to the site, you right click on the site, and then you scroll down and click on the inspect to, and then the inspection panel comes up. Now, yours might not be like this. Remember that in yesterday's class, I had to actually extend it so that I'll see the complete font stack. Now, once it comes up like this, you can either check for any of these labels here. Sometimes you may see the font family under styles. Sometimes you may see it under this label that says computed. So since this one is already selected, let's scroll down a bit and let's see. You can see that over here, the font family used is what? Is Lato in this particular case. Alternatively, you can actually compress this. You can compress this, and when you bring up the inspection panel, click on this icon here, and then you have the ability to actually inspect both the headings and the body text individually. So over here, you can see once I hover on the heading text, the tooltip there says the font is 20px. Font family is Poppins, and what category does it belong to? Sans-Serif category. So it's just like that. Okay, we treated this yesterday, so you can do this for any other site. If we are to try the same thing here for GitHub, and then click on inspect and inspect the website, let's see what we are going to have. You can first of all check it over here where it says font family. So I have color, style, font family. Now you can see that we also have we also have a list here. If you want to see the entire stack, you can simply just extend this bar to the left, and then everything comes up. Or you can still click on this icon and begin to inspect the headings and the body text together. Now inspecting this heading now, you can see that what I have there is a font is a font stack. So that is for that. So we now know what a font stack is. Now, a font directory, which is another term we introduced yesterday, it's more like a folder where your font families are saved. That is a font directory. Like here in Figma, you can actually say that over here, let me select this text. You can actually call this a font directory, okay? It's like a font folder that contains a lot of fonts. Okay, that's just what a font directory is. Okay, now one of the tasks that we are going to be having after today's class is that everyone is going to install a new font. Okay, here in Figma, you are going to install a font that is not currently in the Figma directory. You are going to install it and add it to the Figma directory. So now we've seen that the first method which we actually need to apply while we are trying to determine the font that is used in a website is the inspection method using the inspector tool or CSS Peeper. That is one way you can actually select fonts that you want to use for your projects, okay, in UI design. Now remember, we're talking about UI design and not graphic design, okay? And that's why we are going to websites, because websites are applications of UI design. Now, the second guideline says that you should ignore typefaces with less than 5 weights. I explained this yesterday also, that if you are picking from a group of font families and then you realize that for each or for any of the families, when you come over to this weight variant here and you realize that you have less than 5 weights, okay, that is not a good font family that you should actually pick from. So if you have other options with more variants here or more variations or more weights here, it's better to pick those with more weight so that you can have different options when you are working with your type scale. Okay, so that's for that. Now, the third guideline says you should consider legibility optimization. Now, legibility optimization in the sense that there are some texts that are actually designed to be headline text, and there are some text or font families that are designed to be body text. Now, this is what we are going to talk about, those font families that are okay to be used as headlines, and those that are okay to be used as body text, and those that can serve as both headlines and body text. Okay, I'm going to take a copy of this and then bring it down here. Now, over here, we know that we have serif fonts and sans-serif fonts, right? And for UI design, we are dealing with sans-serif fonts. So I'm going to assume, or we are going to assume that we don't have this here right now. So we are going to focus on this. Okay. Now, even amongst the font families under the sans-serif categories, there are some that are designed specifically for headings, and there are some that are designed to actually fit in as body text. Now, what are those examples? Now, and why is it that they are choosing for headlines, and why is it that others are choosing for body text, even if they belong to the same sans-serif category? Now, the factor to look at there would be something like, one, the typeface design, and secondly, the letter spacing of the text. Now, in order to explain this clearly, I'm going to actually put in a text here now that says, let's just say typography. All right, I'm going to make a copy of that text. And that is what I want to do. Now, we say that there are font families that are better used as headlines, and there are some that are better used as body text. So let's try this out. The first font family for headlines here that is better used as a headline is Oswald, right? So I'll select this first text there and come over to the font directory here and put in Oswald. Okay, I'm going to select that. Now we can see how it's looking, right? Now for this other section says font families for body text. An example is Open Sans. Okay, so I'm going to actually pick this now, because this now is not a body text, right? This is also a headline, just like this. So I want to use that of body text and use it for this headline, and let's see what we are going to have. So I'm going to go to the font directory and I'll pick Open Sans. S-A-N-S is pronounced as Sans. It's pronounced as S-O-N-Z. Okay, so that's for that. Now this is me picking Oswald, which is a font family that is used for headlines. Okay, and then I picked a font family that is used for body text, and I use it for a headline. Now you can see that between these two texts here, there's actually a difference. Now the difference is that font families that are used for headlines, okay, fit into headlines because they are, more often than not, their letter spacing is just perfect the way it is. Okay, for example, for this font family that fits into a headline, if you compare this text and this text, you'll get to realize that over here we have more of, like, should I call it irregular or uncomfortable spacing between the letters. Okay, like you can see now, the spacing between the characters of this word, let's say P and H or H and Y, right, is much compared to that of this particular text. Okay, now the reason why this one is much is because this particular font family is designed for body text. You know, for body text, the sizes will usually be small, about 16 pixels, right? So you want to be able to easily read those texts at small sizes, and for that reason, you are going to need a lot of letter spacing. The typeface needs to have good letter spacing for you to actually be able to read it. So that's for that. Now that is why we are saying that some fonts are actually better to be used as body text, because those fonts have more letter spacing in terms of the typeface or the typeface design. If you check here now, you can see that if I select this text and I come over here, you can see that the letter spacing is 0%, right? And if I select this text, the letter spacing is also 0%. So both of them have the same letter spacing, but this one now is looking like the letters are more spaced as compared to this. Okay, so that's actually the difference. So there are texts that are actually meant for headlines, and there are those that are meant for body text. Now, the one thing you need to know is that for texts that are made for headlines, they are used for headlines only. Okay, because considering the fact that this particular font family is made for headlines, it therefore means that the text or the letters or the characters will be close to each other. Okay, and then if you are using it for, let's say, body text, which are smaller in size, okay, it may create more difficulty in reading as compared to another font family that has good spacing or good letter spacing between the characters. Okay, so for that reason, headline font families are used only for headlines. Okay, so anytime you are using a family that is actually designed, because this font family is actually designed to just be for what, for headlines. So if you are using a font family that is designed for headline, use them only for headlines. Don't use them for body text. Okay, that is a guide that you can use. However, a font family that can be used as a body text can fit into both categories. In other words, it can fit into a headline category or it can fit into a body category. Why? Because at both particular sizes, it can easily be read, because font families designed for body text usually have more spacing. So even if you use them as a headline or use them as a body text, they can they can easily be read, and that's why they can fit into both categories. The only difference is that sometimes when you use them as a headline, you may be having an uncomfortable amount of space between the text. Okay, and if you're not comfortable with the amount of space between the text, you can actually then edit it. Okay, so that it looks like a particular font family that was designed for what, for a headline in the first place. So in this case now, if I'm not comfortable with this extra space in which I'm seeing between the text, I can simply come over here and reduce the letter spacing. Okay, right now it's set to 0%. You can reduce it, can have -1. Okay, you can see letter spacing just reduce, or you can even have, let's say, -5. Okay, you can see now that the characters of the text are coming together and it's beginning to look like those particular font families that are actually designed for what, for headlines. Okay, so bottom line of what we are saying, or the summary of the explanation, is some font families are made to be headlines. They are better used as headlines. Use them as headlines. Okay, while some font families are better used as body text. However, those that can be used as body text can serve as both body text and headlines. So that is just it. So in other words, Open Sans, Inter, Titanium Web, and all the categories here can be used as both body text and headlines. Whereas these font families that are here are better used only as what, as headlines. Okay, so that's just what you need to know with regards to that. So these are the three criteria that you actually need to look at when you are choosing a font family. If you come over here, I think there was a particular website that we actually inspected. Okay, let's check the headline again. If you inspect the headline, you can see that the headline font family here is Poppins. Okay, now that Poppins can be used as both a body text and headline. Okay, so that's what I mean when I say that some font families fit into both those categories. Okay, now for the body text over here is Lato. Now this Lato that is a body text can equally be used as a body text and a headline. So one question you might want to ask is, how do you know those that are designed just for headlines? Well, you can use ChatGPT, from ChatGPT, and ChatGPT will give you some examples of those that are just designed as headlines. So these are actually the guidelines that you need to follow when you want to choose a font family for a particular project in UI design. Now, for letter spacing, more often than not, if you take a particular text and choose a particular font family, right? More often than not, the letter spacing is just okay. Okay, because the typeface designers have designed the text in such a way that, like I say, some are meant for body text, some are meant for headlines. So tweaking the letter spacing is not something that you might really be doing very frequently. Unless maybe you are using like a text that is meant for body text, you want to use that as a headline, you may decide to tweak it just the way we did this one, right? So that's just that. Aside from that, if you take a particular font family that is meant for body text and use it as a body text, there's really no need tweaking the letter spacing, unless maybe you are then using it as a headline, since it can serve for both, and then you can tweak it just the way we just did here. Okay, so that's for that. Now another thing you need to know is that sometimes, let's bring this text here. Okay, or should we take another? Now let's just do this. Let me put in a text, same text. Okay, while in normal sentence case, right? And I want to actually change the letter spacing to a value of 0%. Okay, and then I will make the same text, but this time everything will be in uppercase. All right. Now there are times when you are working with text and you are using normal sentence case. By normal sentence case, I mean the first letter is uppercase, all the other ones are lowercase, right? Now you realize that such letters are like they are easier to read as compared to when everything is uppercase. Okay, because when everything is uppercase, hierarchy becomes an issue. Like if I select this text, now I know that the first one is the uppercase letter. Okay, so that one has more hierarchy compared to the other smaller ones, right? Which makes it easier to read. Now, if you have text in such a way that it's all caps, everything is uppercase, there are times where you may be feeling like the text are too cramped together. Okay, so for uppercase letters like this, situations where you have all caps, everything uppercase, it's advisable that if you want to tweak the letter spacing, you can just try to increase it a bit, okay, so that you can have little spacing. Let it not be like all the text are actually what jam-packed together. Okay, so this is another situation where tweaking the letter spacing may actually be useful. So that is all for the guidelines for actually choosing a particular font family that you are going to use for a project, okay, in UI design, like I said. So we've looked at the guidelines. We now know what a font stack is, and we now know what a font directory is. Okay, now for the tasks that you are going to do, you are going to come over to the Figma font directory, okay, and we realize that there are some fonts that are not here. Okay, so your task will be to actually download these fonts from Google and then install them on your computer so that Figma can easily pick them, okay, from your computer. So what you can simply do is that let's look at some of the fonts that are not here, and I want it to be a Sans-Serif font. Okay, so Inter is here, Roboto is here, Vertica is here, Open Source is here. Let's check if the Sogo UI font is here. Okay, you can see that's not there. Okay, so you can decide to pick that and then install it on your system, and so you are going to find it here. Now, when you install it on your system, what is the procedure like? Well, that is actually why we are giving you the task. You will need to go to YouTube, okay, check ChatGPT, and do everything that is needed to ensure that you actually install this particular font and you can get it here. Because there are sometimes when you want to use a font for a project and it's not on the font on the Figma font directory. So in that case, you need to install it. Okay, so that's why we actually give you the task, so you know how to go about those situations now before you actually meet them in the future. So I don't have that here. Now, in your own Figma directory, you won't also have Titanium Web there. Okay, so you can decide to install that there. I don't know if I have this Nonito Sans there. Let's see. Okay, I have that there, so no problem. I should have Lato here. Okay, let's see. Let me see if I have Lato here. I have Lato there. Okay, so what you can simply do is I'm not sure if I have this bricolag here. Let me see. Okay, it's also there. All right, so the ones we don't have there are in this kit that you may not have. Okay, includes Titanium Web, because I had to install this one myself, and then this Sogo UI. Okay, so you can actually decide to install any of them. So for the task, you have to pick one of them and simply just install them. Okay, and maybe take a screenshot of the once you install it, it's going to be showing here now. Once you come to the search bar, you are going to see it here. So you can just use the sniping tool, okay, because every system has a sniping tool, right? Use the sniping tool, take a screenshot of the particular font family here, and then you can just send it to the Discord server, so we know that you've actually learned how to install a new fonts. Okay, so that is for that. So now that we have done with typeface, remember typeface represents font family. Okay, so because in text we have typeface and then we have type scale. Okay, we have typeface and then we have type scale. All right, so typeface is same thing as font family, but type scale talks about size. Right, so know the difference. We have looked at the guidelines for actually choosing typeface. Okay, now what are the guidelines for establishing a type scale, which is a system of font sizes? A system of font sizes. What are the guidelines? Now, what we say guidelines for establishing a type scale? If you're working on the project, for example, and then you bring in a text, let's say you bring in any text here. Let's say you're actually working on a design project now, be it graphic or UI design, and you bring in a text. Now, more often than not, you usually go to your typography properties here, and then you are changing the size manually. Okay, now what if you are working on a very large project? You want a more seamless process, okay, something that is more organized and faster for you instead of you to be manually doing this all the time. So that's what we mean by coming up with a type skill or establishing a type skill. Now, before we talk about establishing a type skill, you first of all need to understand the different types of text that we have. After understanding the different types of text that we have, you are then going to understand the type skill that you actually want to establish. Okay, so now let's look into the different types of text that we actually have. The texts are divided in such a way that they play certain roles in user interface. Now, what are the roles? The roles actually include the display role, the headline role, title role, body role, and label role. So we have the display text, headline text, title text, body text, and the label text. Now, in order for us to actually look into what these are and the roles that they play and what their functions are, we are now going to go to our second resource material, which is material design. Okay, now remember that in yesterday's class we actually reference our refactoring UI resource material, and everything is available on the resource channel of Discord server. So now we want to know the different text roles that we have. So now we are going to go to material design. So what you can simply do is go to your browser, just click in material design 3. Okay, then on Google, and then click on the first result that you have there, and then wait for it to actually load up. Comes up with the material design document, which is a guide that we are using throughout this particular bootcamp. Now you can go over to where it says styles. See, once I hover on it, this slider comes up, and we are dealing with typography. Click on typography, and then click on where it says type skill and tokens. Let me scroll down here. Okay, what I want is not here. Click on where it says applying type. Okay, click on where it says applying type. Let's see. All right, and then you are going to see the different types of text and the roles that they actually play. So now let's look at these texts one after the other. The first one we are going to look at is what's referred to as a display text. Now, if you are making a design in a user interface, the largest text that you have on that interface is referred to as the display text. Okay, and it's often the largest screen text. Now, in order for us to do or to have a practical understanding of this, let's go to the website. Okay, let me go to the home page, which is the very first page of the website. I have this. If you go to many websites, you are going to see that there is this first section here that gives you a brief overview of what the website is about. Okay, like this is a turbine website, so for that reason I have an image there, and I have a text here describing I have a text here that is related to the image and describing the services that are rendered on this website. So with just this particular page here, I can actually give a summary of what this website is about. Okay, now this page here is referred to as the hero section. Now the hero section always contains a display text, or it always contains a hero text, which is usually a display text. Now this here is a display text. Like we said, the display text is the largest screen text. The text that tells you or that supports the hero section, as you can see, is the display text, and you can see that on this particular interface, it is the largest text here. Okay, so that is what we mean when we say displays text. More often than not, is usually in either bold or semi-bold, bold, or black. But we'll talk about the weight in a couple of minutes. Let's go back to material design. So you now know what a display text is, right? So the display text is the largest text on the screen, and usually it is not that it's not that lengthy. Do you understand? You don't use a display text the way you use a body text. Like in this case, in explaining all this, you can see that we have up to 3, 4, 5 lines of text. Okay, you don't use a display text like that. You go back to that particular website or any website at all, you can see what you have. Maximum you should be having, if it's so much, you should be having 3 lines of text. Okay, but more often than not, usually 1 or 2. All right, because it's just to actually give a very brief summary of what the hero section of the site is about. Okay, so this over here is what is the display text, and over here in our canvas, okay, we have let me change the color of this to white. Let me change the color of this to white. Okay. Let me break that. All right. So this is also an example of what of the hero section of a website, and you can see that this text here just simply tells us more about what about the site. Now this is a display text. Okay, so you now know what the display text does and where it can be found. Okay, it is found in the hero section. There are times when you go to a site and it may not always be at the top here. Okay, it could be at the center, or sometimes it may be somewhere around here. But the moment you see it, you'll be able to know that okay, this or what you have is what is a display text. Okay, now what are the properties of the display text? Usually it is the largest screen text. Okay, it's very short like we've seen. Okay, and it's used on large screens. Okay, mobile, tablet, and desktop. Okay, so take note of that. And more often than not, it has expressive fonts. In other words, it's not really used with a regular width. Do you understand? You can see that the width here is actually bold. Okay, and then if you go over to this side, you can see that it's bold. And even the one we have here, you can see that is bold. So you really don't find display text that are looking like this, for example. You will find display text looking like this. No. You will find display text looking like this. No. And more often than not, regular is not really used for display text. Okay. From semi-bold down to what? To black. Okay. That's what is used for display text. Semi-bold, bold, which is majorly used, or even black. Okay. So take notes of that for display text. So you now know what display text are, right? Now the next we want to look at is the next text we have there, looking at the role it plays. Now the next text we want to look at is the headline text. Now the headline text is actually sometimes used to just support your display text. Okay, and it's also very short. Okay, let's see if we could have examples here. This one here at the top could be taken as display text. Okay, now this next one here could be taken as what? As a headline text. Let's see if we have other examples here. Like in this case now, this is an example of what? Headline text. Okay, so that's a headline text. Okay, let's check another site. All right, you can see that this is the largest text. This is the display text. Okay, what we have here is a display text. Okay, then these ones here, they are headline texts. Right, these ones are headline text. Now you can see that there's a difference between this text here and this one, which is at the top here. The display text is not just used throughout all the pages of the site. Okay, like I said, it's usually in the hero section. You understand? Which is more like the first section once you go to a particular site. So these are display text, and then these other headings here are headline. What? They are headline text, right? So that's for headline text. So you now know display text, right? And where they are used. You now know that we also have headline text, and we also have title text, which are the next rules that we are going to play. Okay, these are all headline texts. Now we also have title text. Just as headline text are smaller than what? Display text, title text are also smaller than what? Than display text. Okay, and note, both display text and headline text, they are usually expressive. Expressive in the sense that you use a very noticeable font width for it. Okay, so you don't use font width like thin. Okay, like I explained for the display text. So we use expressive fonts for display and expressive fonts for what? For headline text. Now let's talk about the next one there, which is the title text. Now title texts are smaller than headlines, okay, and they are relatively short. And more often than not, title texts are usually very, very, very common when you are working with mobile devices, okay, and they are also common in other devices like tablets and desktops as well. But more often than not, you see a lot of title text when you are working with the mobile breakpoints and the rest. So let's go to a site, or let's try what we have here. In this case now, this is my title text. Okay, this is the title text. All these ones here, they are title text. These are all title text. Right? So I believe that seeing it like this will make it easier for you to actually understand, because just explaining properties doesn't really give a practical explanation. So display text, you can see headline text, title text, right? Let's go to sites. Okay, this is a title text, right? Take note of that. These are headline text. These ones here, they are title text. These ones here, they are headlines. So just like that. So for the hierarchy, just know that display text are the biggest, followed by what? Followed by headline text. Then followed by title text, as you can now see. All right. So now after title text, what do we have? What do we have? Body text. Everybody here should actually know what body texts are, right? So body texts are generally used for passages, okay? And the size of a body text is usually 16 pixels. Okay, usually 16 pixels doesn't mean that all websites use 16 pixels. So some might use 15 pixels, some might use 14 pixels, but a good place to be is actually 16 or 16 pixels. Let's see if we can actually do an inspection, because website inspection also gives you the size of the body text. Let's use CSS Peeper and let's see if the size of the text comes with it. Okay, can't find it here now, right? Let's try to inspect. Let's click on any particular link on the site and try to inspect it. Let's assume that I go to this particular page. I'm looking, okay. I have examples of body text here. So let me see if I can use CSS Peeper too. Okay. Now you can see over here, as I hover on this, the font size there is, I think that's 19.5 px, right? Let's look for other body text. Font size here is 11.7 px. But these are not, these ones are not really body text. These ones are more like, they are more like links. Okay. Now for body text, let's go to sites with a lot of write-up, something like this. Okay. These are really examples of body text. The size of this text and the size of the links at the top or the links at the bottom won't actually be the same. Okay. That's why some are called body text. Some are called CTAs. Okay, so for this body text, now let's over on them. You can see that the size here is, say the font is 14 pixels. Like I told you, some are 16, some use 16, some use 14. Okay, so over here is 14 pixels. Let's go to, more often than not, the body text size is what? Is 16 pixels. So these write-ups that you have in your website, size are 60, just use 16 pixels. Okay, and most mobile apps as well use 16 pixels. So for the bootcamp, we'll be using 16 pixels. So that's it for body text. Now, aside from body text, there are times when you want to actually display some text in your UI that are actually, should I say, smaller than the body text. And that's what we are going to look at. We are going to look at labels or text that are playing the roles of a label. Now, these texts are usually smaller than what the body text, and they are used for bottom up bars or maybe inside components, or they are used as captions, or when you are designing chips or things like that. You might have gone to a particular site before, and then you have a list of items to choose from in little boxes like this, right? Maybe more often than not, there are usually a lot of boxes like this. They'll just be around each other. They are called chips. Okay. Now, the text that are used in those chips. Now, you can use body text for the design of the text as well, but more often than not, label text are used in those particular chips. Okay, so label text will be smaller than what body text, and the body text will be smaller than title text, and just like that, we have the 5 different classes of text that we have for UI design. Okay, so we have display text, we have headline text, we have title text, we have body text, and then we have label text. Now, if you are actually trying to work on a project, if you're working on a project, you need to have what is referred to as a type scale, okay, which is actually a system of font sizes, a consistent system of font sizes with all these texts included. Okay, how do we do that? What you can simply do is, let me take each of them now. I'll just come over here and I'll click on text 2. Okay, I'll put in, first one is display, right? So display text. Okay, then after the display text, let's actually just duplicate this so we have all of them here. After display text, what we should be having should be headline text, right? Sorry, headline text. After that, what we have is title text. After that, what we should be having is, it should be body text now. Then after that, what we should be having should be label text, right? All right, that gives me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which are the 5 categories that we actually need to actually come up with a type scale. Okay, so I'm going to take this out and take this out. Now, later on, when we want to work with high fidelity designs, you get to realize that this display text is also divided into 3: display large, display small. Sorry, display large, display medium, display small, depending on whether you're working with a desktop, mobile, or tablet. The same thing with headline text, the same thing with title text. These first 3, 1, 2, 3, that each of them is divided into large, medium, and small. Okay, but at this particular stage, we just want you to know how to actually have a consistent type scale, okay, a consistent and reusable type scale. So that's why we are treating this now. Okay, so what we can do is, if you're working on a project, for example, and then you know that, okay, you might need display text, you might need headline text, you might need title text, you might need body text. Automatically, we know that the size of this should be 16, right? So just come over here and give that 16 pixels. Right, let me select the text. Come over here and give it 16 pixels, right? 16 pixels. So that's fine. You know that all your body text will be 16. Remember that I just changed this to a size of 16. But if I change this, it's possible that there are other properties that I might need to change. Okay, so what will I do? If this is 16, the question you may ask yourself is, what should be the letter spacing? Now, if you don't want to, what should be the line height? If you don't want to bother yourself about line height, right, you can always set this to auto. Just put in A and click enter. Okay, set it to auto, and then you can change your size however you want it. Because if I should come over here and change that text from 16 to, because right now it's set to 16, right? If you check, if I click on this, you can see that the automatic value Figma has given to it is 24 pixels. Now, if I select this same text that's size 16, and I change this to maybe 40. If I come over here and I click on this, I will no longer see 24. I'll see something else. You see, Figma has actually given you a line height of 61 pixels. So Figma is changing the line height to conform with the size. That is when this particular line height is set to what? Is set to auto. So if you don't want to bother yourself about it too much, you can set it to auto. But if you don't want to use auto and you want to be changing it manually, what you should know that if, for example, this is 16 pixels, your line height, like I told you guys in the class yesterday, right, it's just a guide. You can decide that, okay, your line height should always be 8 pixels above your above your size. So if this is 16, I'll come over here and put in 24. Okay, and you can see that by default, Figma is already putting 24. So it's actually a guide that works, right? So put in 24. That's just it. If here is 20, I'll add 8 to it. Here should be something like 28. Okay, just like that. So that's for that. Now, what about the letter spacing? Remember what we're talking about letter spacing, and we were like, most typefaces are designed in such a way that you don't have to bother about the letter spacing. Okay, so for body text, we'll leave it there at 0%. So that's it. Now for label text should be what? Should be smaller than body text. So if my body text is 60, label 12 could be, say, let's take a label text could be, say, let's take a value of 12, right? So I'm going to take a value of 12 pixels. Okay, now me taking a value of 12 doesn't mean that there's a rule. You understand? You can take a value of 10. Like I said, later on, we are going to work with a system that gives you all you need. So for this part, we are just trying to actually make you conversant with saving what I refer to as text styles. Okay, so I'm taking 12. If you are doing your practice, you can take 10. Okay, so that, or you can even take 14 if you want to. So I'm taking 12. What will be my line height if I'm to change it manually? This becomes, let's say, 20 pixels. Okay, leave your letter spacing the way it is, right? So I have this. So it is very easy for us to tweak this too, right? Because we know that for body text for most sites is 16 pixels, right? And then label text will always be smaller than what? 16 pixels, since it's a label. So for that reason, we have taken 12. Now, where we might be having an issue is for display text, headline text, and title text. In order for us to work with this in a way that makes sense, what style should we give to our display text? We don't know, right? So let's go and inspect, just inspect the site. Let's inspect this site. Let's go back to the home page. This is your display text in this case. Okay, this smart service is your display text in that particular page. Let's come over here. Let's see if I can use website inspection here. Let me inspect. But to bring up your inspection panel, remember to always click on this first before you move it around. Okay, so if I hover on this display text here, you can see the size is 36 pixels, right? So the font size is 36 pixels, which is fine. Let me go to another site. Do I have a display text here? Yeah. If I hover on this, what's the font size there? You can see that the font size is 64 pixels. Okay. Now, for most sites, or more often than not, the display text is usually, because like a display text should be expressive, right? So your display text usually has a range. Okay, let's say from 54 pixels to about 72 pixels. So you can take 54, you can take 60, you don't have to put the range in your head. The moment you design one product, you'll be able to know the range yourself. Do you understand? So it's not something that you have to cram. So for now, just listen and just understand. Okay, so the initial one we had just now, I don't know if I remember the display text for that particular site. Now, okay, this is 36 pixels, right? So like I said, there's no particular rule when it comes to design. Sometimes it's subjective. It depends on the designer. Because another designer will come here and put in 44 pixels. Do you understand? But it still makes sense because it's more like it's a tolerance. Now, the only way to not make sense is if you come here and put in 16 pixels as your display text, because 16 is for body text. So you have gone far away from the tolerance. I don't know if you understand. That's why I say there's no particular fixed rule. There's no law. All you have is a guide. Okay. So I've seen that I can have a display text of 36, which is fine. I can have a display text of 64 pixels, right? Which is fine. And this is actually the case more often than not. Then let's check which other website. Let's check this Meta website here. Let's see for this is our display text now. Okay. Let's see what we have. I'm seeing a size of 24 pixels. Now in this case, this is more like a headline text, right? Because the display text doesn't really fall within this range. So this is more like this is more like a headline a headline text here. So let's go back and try to put in a value. So for my display text, I can take like I told you, generally it could be between let's just say 50 to 70 or 50 to 72 within that range. So I can just come here and pick a value of say 54, right? Let me just pick 54 or 56, pick whatever you want. Click on enter, and then for because now that, and this is part of the reason why we're actually doing this manually, as we just change the size to 54, you can see how the text is actually looking. Okay, you can see that the bounding box is not actually covering the text. So this is not a good way to design a text. Okay, this is my bounding box here, must cover it. Just like if I hover on this, you can see that the bounding box is covering the entire text. And the text and its baseline, they are inside the bounding box. Okay, if I select this, that's not the case, right? So what you want to do is that you want to check the line height. If this is 54, I can add 8 to that to give me line height of 62, right? And then I have this, which is actually what I want. Okay, so you see that adding 8px to the size to get the line height is something that works. My letter spacing, you can leave that as 0%. Okay, like I told you, you hardly ever touch this. So that's for that. Now, my headline text, if I took 54 here, I can decide to make my headline text smaller. I can take 48, right? So you see, it's just more like, the values I'm taking are just more like experience, right? It's not something that you just cram, or, like I said, once you work on one project, you get this better. Or once you get to the high fidelity design stage, you get this better. Then for my title text, if I took 40 something here, I can just come and take 36 here, right? 836. Now, I'm actually changing the line height because I decided to go manually, okay? If you set your line height to auto, you don't have to change it. Figma will do it for you. So 36, if I add 8 to that, that should give me 44, right? I'm doing this for those of you that, because there are times when you're working with text and you want to tweak the line height, so at least you should know how to edit it with this particular process. So now I have a system here. I have my display text, right? I have my headline text. I have title text, body text, and I have label text. But you agree with me that there are sometimes when you are making a design, like if you go to a site, you realize that you have different sizes of text. Like this is 16, right? This body text here is 16. Now, sometimes body text also have headings, small headings before them. You can see this heading here now, for example. You can see that this text is a different size, right? This one is a different size. This one might be a different size. So you have different sizes. This text here, that different. You have different sizes in a website. Do you understand? So if you're actually trying to work with that, it therefore means that you need a sizing system. You understand? You need a types, and that's what we refer to as a type scale. It's just a system of font sizes that you can actually use that is consistent. Do you get? Instead of coming to your properties panel and you're picking manually all the time. And aside from having different sizes, which we have now created, you also have different font weights. Okay, you can see some are regular, some are heavy. You understand? There are cases where some might be light. So you might have bold, you may have black, you may have regular. So we also need those variants of different font weights. So since we now have different sizes, right, which we understand, we need to create variants of font weights because we can't just use everything and say that they are bold. Or if I decide to make the body text regular, what if maybe somewhere in my design I need a body text that is bold? What do I do then? Do you understand? That means you have to come over here and change it manually again. Do you understand? Which is acceptable, but it's not the proper way to work if you are dealing with very, very large projects like you are going to be doing later. So the best way to go about this is you are going to create variants. You are going to take this, make a copy, and then take this, make a copy. Now, what are the variants like? Select everything. Everything here should be set to, let's say, because you are going to choose what you want, okay? Definitely, I need regular. Whenever you're making a design, you need tests that are in the regular, what's in the regular way too. Click on regular. So everything that's regular. Fine. I'll come in and select all this. And then come to, now if you notice, while everything is selected, if I go to the size, it says mixed because my size of my display text and my headline text, they are not the same. So that's why I say mixed, okay? So the same thing that happens if you go to the later line height, it also says mixed because they have different line heights. But if I come over here now, so I have some for regular, okay? Then you decide what you want to use in your particular project. Now, more often than not, you hardly use black. Do you understand? You hardly use black. You may use black only for situations where you have display text, okay? So for every other category, you hardly use black. So we are going to pick 3 variants here: regular, semi-bold, and bold. So this will be semi-bold. Select all this. This is going to be bold, right? Okay, I think I have bold selected already. So now I have 3 variants that I can use, which are 1, regular. I think I should actually name them. Let me put this here, put this here, and put this here. And then let me give them some breathing space. All right. All right. All right. So this will be regular variants, right? This will be semi-bold variants because semi-bold. This should be bold variants. Fine. Now the next thing you want to do is that you want to actually save this particular variant here or this type scale, because everything now, what you now have is what is referred to as a type scale, okay? What you have is now a type scale. Okay. It's a list of text with different sizes and also different weights. So how do you save it? Let's say, for example, I put in something here. I don't know if I brought this now. Okay. Let's use this for instance. All right. Let's say, for example, I give the property, because this text now has properties. What are properties? It's set to regular and the size is 54, right? The same to every other text. So let's say I give the properties of this to this text here. Let me set it to regular. This came with some. Okay. Set to regular. Let me make, I don't know if that size is going to fit in here, but let me just make the size 54. Okay, you can see it's bigger. This should become, say, 62, right? All right. I have something like this. Now, if I want to change to another text, let's say I want to change to a body text, you realize that I have to now select it again. And I'll come back to the properties panel, right? And I'll then start editing it again. Just change the size, change the letter spacing. And let's say you're working with a very large file, right, or a large system of files, then you don't have the time to be doing this. Okay, you don't have it. So what you want to do is that you want to actually create what I refer to as textiles. Want to create what I refer to as textiles. Now, what is a style? A style simply refers to the way something looks. Okay. Now, in this case, now all these regular variants, you can see that they are all regular. Is that also like for this display text is regular for width. Now the size is 54 and it has this value of what of line height. Now this is the style. Do you understand? As you can see it right now, the way it looks is the style. You can see that this style is different from this style, and this style is different from this style, right? So simply put, a style is simply how something looks. So that's a style. So now you can decide to actually save each of these particular texts as styles, so that anytime you want to use them, all you need to do is go back to that same style and use it. So what you want to do is that in order for you to save a text as a style, you select the text. Once you select it, come over to your properties panel, right? And for this section, now you can see under typography, we already have the properties of the style here. So I want to save all these properties. So I'll come to this icon here that says apply style. Do you understand? Click on it. Now, if you want to save something, that means you want to add it. Is that also? So for that reason, the next thing you're going to do is that you're going to click on the add icon here that says create style. Click on it. Once you click on it now, you come over here and you put in display text. Because that's the name of the text now. I can just put in display. Display text. Now, since it's regular, you can put in a bracket if you want to. I'm putting regular. Okay. And then, now, what is a display text used for? You already know what it's used for. There's no need for you to give the description here. This description is just for you to tell what it's used for. Okay. Let's say somebody comes into your file and the person doesn't know what a display text is used for. But more often than not, anybody who will be coming into your file is a technical person. So this can be left empty. So click on create style. And I have it there. Now, once you click on that, if I click on my empty canvas and I come over to styles, right, you can see something here that says display text in bracket regular. Now you see it has saved that style, and the size is what 54. It's going to show the size and the line height 54/62. Can you see that now? So that style is saved. So what does that mean? It simply means that if I bring in a random text in Figma and maybe I type MAN, for example, right, and I want to give it a display property. If I want to give it a display property, all I need to do is just click on the text, come over here, apply the style. Okay, now look at what Figma did. Now what Figma did is that since I just saved this style, the new text that I brought in, the text came with the style that I just saved. Do you understand? How do you know that it came with a style? Once you select it, come over here. You can see this little icon here, right? Anytime you make a text in Figma and you come to the properties panel and you see that this icon, right, is actually attached to the property of that text, just know that there's a style attached to it. You see, if I over, it says detach style. So click on it now. It has detached. Now I have this panel to do whatever I want. If I can change it to 40 if I want to, and I have a smaller text, right? And if I should bring in any text now, each of them are going to just have those properties I can edit because the style has been detached. If, however, you want to apply the style to a text that doesn't have it, select the text. Once you select it, come over to the properties panel, right? And then click on this icon here. Okay. Once you click on that icon, you can see the style that you saved is here. Can you see the style? So if I click on it now, automatically it's going to apply the style to this text. So let me click on it. And then once you come over here, you are going to see that this symbol comes up again, letting me know that a style is what? A style is attached. Okay. Now, what do I do in order for me to actually organize the saving of all these things? Because there's a way I will save it here, right? And then I'm going to have display, headline, title, body, label, which is fine. But this is also display, headline, type. It's the same name. Do you understand? So what do I do in order for me to avoid confusion when I'm saving here? Now in that case, now you're going to put each of them in a folder. Now those folders are called repositories. Okay, so you can call them repositories or you call them folders. That's what I mean by textiles and repositories over here. So you are going to save everything that you have inside a folder. Now, how do you save everything that you have inside a folder? Now, what you simply do is that you have to actually determine the folder from looking at this text here. I have three variants here. I have regular, so there'll be a folder for regular. I have semi-bold, there'll be a folder for semi-bold. I have bold, there'll be a folder for bold. So it's just like saving things inside your folder on your desktop, right? So that once you open the folder, you see everything inside that folder. Once you open the next folder, you see everything in that folder. Once you open the next, you see everything, which gives you a more organized type skill. Do you understand? So now there are times when, remember that if you can have folders like 1, 2, 3 are folders now. So you have 3 folders here. You can have folders inside a general folder. Yeah, so I can have this, and this inside a bigger folder, which is referred to as type skill in this case. So my first folder is going to be this. That folder is going to contain 3 other folders, which are 1, 2, 3. And each of these folders are going to contain the type scales that I've chosen that are under there. So how do we do this? The first thing you want to do is bring back your properties panel, right? Click on the empty canvas. If you create a style, you can actually remove the style. How do you remove it? Over on the style, right click. Once you right click, it says delete style. Okay, so click on delete and what you saved is gone. Now what you can do is, if you want to actually create a folder in Figma, here on the properties panel, what you can simply do is that, let's say I want to create a folder for type skill, right? Let's do it this way. Let's name the general folder type skill. Okay, so I want to save this folder, this folder, this folder under one general folder. What I'll simply do is come over here, select this one that you want to save. Once you select it, you are going to save it as a style. Just the way we save this one, you are going to save everything the same way, but just that the naming is going to be different. So I'm going to select this, come over here to this icon, right? Click on that icon and then come over to where it says add. Now, if I want to save that as a folder, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put in something like this: regular variants. By writing in the name, it's just a name right now. If I want to change this text to a folder, I'll just click on slash. Now that slash there simply means that Figma is going to treat everything before that slash symbol as a folder. So Figma is going to treat this as a folder. So let's say, for example, what is inside the folder? Let's say I put in contents. Okay, and I click on create style. Let's see what happens here. Okay, now if I click on my empty canvas and I come over here, you can see that there's a drop down. I can click on the drop down to collapse it. Now this now is a folder, regular variants. Now if I want to check what's inside the folder, I'll click on the drop down. I'll see contents. Do you understand? So that's actually how to make something a folder. Once you write in the name, the next thing you want to do is put a slash. Okay, so now that we know that, let me actually delete this folder that I've created now. Now that we know that, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to save each of these texts, right? And I'm going to save them in a folder, just the way I did this one now. So what you can do is, what you actually want to save are these contents here. Is that also? You want to save the contents inside this folder. So you come to the contents and start saving them one after the other. So I'll click on this. Once I click on it, bring back my properties panel, go over to where it says typography, click on this symbol, click on the plus sign. And once I click on the plus sign, the first name you should write is the name of the general folder. What's the name of the general folder? We are creating a type skill, right? So you can write in type skill. Okay, then see which is this folder here, the biggest folder. Now what you can do next is, in order to make it or to show that it's a folder, after typing is put in slash. That is one folder. Now after this folder, I have another folder that talks about regular variants, right? So I'm going to put in regular variants. Okay. Now this is also a folder, right? Put a slash there. So I have two folders, the main folder and the next one. Now after the regular variants, what I have left is the content, which is display text. So over here, I'll just put in display text. It's not compulsory that the first letter must be uppercase, right? But then you can just decide to do it like that. Okay, I'll just put in display text. Now, is display text a folder? No, it's a content. So for that reason, I won't put on that slash, because if I put a slash in front, I'm saying that this is a folder. So now that I've put in this folder, and I've put in this folder, and I've put in the content, you can click on create style. Automatically, it has created the style here in Figma. How will you see it? Click on the empty canvas. Once you click on the empty canvas, go to where it says styles. You can see text styles, right? You can see that there's now two drop downs, okay, that you can actually collapse. The first one is the major folder, which is type scale. Inside type scale, I have regular variants. Now, inside regular variants, I have I have display text. Do you understand? If I decide to collapse this, it simply means inside type scale, which is the main folder, I have I have another folder, which is regular variants, right? So inside type scale, I have regular variants. So it's only when I open regular variants that I'm going to see the content, which is this. So that's how to save that. Now, what you can simply do, okay, to make this easier for you, because you don't have to be typing and typing and typing. So this is what we are going to do. We're going to click on texts, and we are going to write in how we save the folder. So type scale, slash, which means that's one folder, regular variants. That's the second folder, slash. Then display text, right? Display text. Now, sorry. And that's how we save this one. So what you can simply do is copy this. Just highlight it, Ctrl C. You've copied it. We've saved the first one, right? Let's go and try to save the next one. Click on it. Once you click on it, come to this same properties panel. Go to this icon. Click on the icon. And then you still want to save the next this next text here. So click on the plus icon again. And then under name, just Ctrl V, paste whatever you've copied before, because it's the same folder, right? The same main folder, the same subfolder. So type scale, regular variant will still be there. The only thing now you change is this last part, the contents. Instead of display text now, it's going to be what? Headline text. I wrote text there, sorry. It's supposed to be text. So it's going to be headline text, right? All right. And then you can then click save. Once you click save, I have now saved two. Now let's see how it looks. If I click on my empty canvas, you can now see that under the main folder, which is type scale, because what we are creating is a type scale. Okay, I have a smaller folder, a subfolder, which is regular variant. Now under that regular variant, and I have this and this. Now that's how you are going to save everything. So we are going to actually do everything very fast now. So we've saved number 2, right? Then the next thing, select the third one you want to save. Come over here. Or click on this, click on the plus icon. Just Ctrl V. The reason why we copy this is so that when we come here, we don't start typing again. Just click on Ctrl V. Now, in this case, what I'm going to have is title text, right? So just change the display to title. Okay. Title text. I made a mistake spelling test instead of text. So T-E-X-T. What you can do is, since I made a mistake, I can decide to copy this whole thing again. So that when I paste it, that text won't be coming out for my mistake, right? So click on create, that one is saved. Go to the next one, body text, select it. Come over under typography, this symbol here, click on it. Click on it, click on apply styles. Ctrl V. Okay, instead of title now, just highlight it, change that to body. Right? And then put a little space. Now, when you are making your editing here, make sure that you don't remove this slash at the back, because once you remove this slash symbol at the back, you are already seeing that this is no longer a folder. So it's only going to save the main folder and save everything as a content. Do you understand? Everything after it as a content. So be careful when you are doing that. So that's for that. Save that. After which, click on the last one, body, and then Ctrl V. Just change the title to body. That's just it. Then click on your space, because once you change it, the text comes close to it. Once that's done, you create. So automatically you've saved this folder, you saved this subfolder under it, and you saved all this content. Okay, so if I click on my empty Figma canvas and I have type scale, which is the first one, and then I have a subfolder, that everything is under that subfolder for regular variants. So if I collapse this, you see that everything collapses. Okay, so this is one folder. Now to actually save the next one, you move to the next one. Now remember that we are not saving we are not clicking on these names, right? What we are clicking on are just the contents. Okay, we are just using these as names of folders, right? So we are just clicking on the content. So when you come here, you are not clicking on this. No, just go click on 1, 2 down to the last. Once you come over here, click on this to the last, just like that. So for this one, look at what I'm going to do now. I'm going to click on this, right? And I want to save it. Come over here, click on that symbol, click on the add icon there, then paste the same name that I've been pasted since. Now, just that there's a difference. The difference is that while I was here, I was actually saving everything under this folder, right? Now I have moved to texts that are under another folder. So what do? Change the name of the folder in that name that you just pasted. So instead of regular variants, it's now semi-bold variants. So click on the regular. Once it's highlighted, change it to semi-bold. Okay. And then what you can do is copy everything. Select everything and Ctrl+C. And then you can go to the end and check the name. Over here now is display text. Okay, instead of title, change that to display. Okay. Okay, display, there should be a space between it. You might decide not to put a space if you want to. So this is now fine. So I have changed that first folder which I was using. I have changed the name now, okay, to the new folder. So what you want to do is want to copy everything. Just select it and copy. So I can always be pasting now for this set. Now click on create. And once you click on create, look at what's going to happen. If I check here now, if I click on the empty canvas and I check here, you can see the major folder I see type scale, right? But under it I have 2 folders, regular variants and semi-bold variants. Can you see that now? If I collapse this, these are the 2 folders. So major folder, then first subfolder, second subfolder. Now under regular variants, if I expand this, I'm going to see all this there. If I click on this, you see I've seen that there. Now under semi-bold, if I expand this, I've only saved one, so you're only going to see one there. That's just that. Okay, so this is actually more organized. You're actually documenting your type scale. That's just what we are doing here. So in order for us to move fast, I'll click on the next one. Come over here, click on this, click on the add button, just Ctrl+V. Now in this case, there's no need for me to now change the folder name again, because remember that after changing that time, I copied it. So I still have semi-bold variant, everything is still okay. The only thing I'll be changing now is the name of the content, which is headline text. So instead of display, here becomes headline. Then click on create. I don't need to check again, right? Click on the next one. Just like that. Ctrl+V. Instead of display, change it to title. Click on create. After that, next one is body text. Select it. Come over here. Click on the plus sign. Paste that. Instead of display now, and I have body, right? Click on create. Next one is label. Select it. Add the style. Paste the name. Then change the display there to label. Now I am done with this particular set. Okay. So remember, if you want to start the process, you can just write in something like this and just copy the name, knowing that the first thing you are saving is a type scale and it's a folder, so you put a slash. Then the next first folder you want to, the first subfolder you want to save is regular variants. So type in regular variants, put a slash, and then the first text you want to save, display text, write in display text here, and then you can click on this first one, paste this there, save it, click on the second one, just like that. So that's for that. So I'm done with this part. Now if I come over here, I'll click on this display text now. Click on this icon, add my style, Ctrl+V. Now remember that this is now the 3rd folder, so you need to change the folder name from semi-bold variants to bold variants. So you just go to where it says semi-bold and change that to bold. Okay. and then give a little space between it and the variant. You can decide not to give a space, that's fine. But just know that whether you give a space or not, you are going to copy what is there. So if you don't give a space, you copy it. Make sure that you just continue like that without giving a space. Do you understand? But if you give a space and you copy, make sure you continue like that with the space, because if you actually save this name with a space and then you paste and then you try to save another one, you don't give a space, it's going to come out as two different folders entirely. So take note of that. So display text, right? So let's go to the edge and see what we have. Display text, click on create. That's done. Next one we have is headline text. Okay, saving it as a style. Just change the, okay, you see what happened now? I did not save, I changed this part, this semi-bold to bold, but I didn't change it. So now I have to change it. I have to now edit it again, back to bold again. Okay. But this time, what was going to happen is I'm going to copy it so that I don't have to be changing all the time. Now this is headline, right? Headline. So before you save it, select everything and copy. Then you create. Then the next one, paste it there. So see, I made a mistake. I put in BOLS. Okay, so we are going to see the effect of that mistake, but we can actually correct it later on. It's actually bold, not that. Okay, let's just put this as bold. So over here, I'm going to put in title. Did I copy that? I don't even remember. Body text. Okay. Let me Ctrl V and see. Just like I didn't copy the last one. Okay. This part is body, right? Let me copy everything now, so I don't have to be editing too much. Create. Then the last one is label. Select it. Come over here. So now I need to change just label. Body to label. Now I have that. Now remember that I made a mistake, but the effect of the mistake is going to show you, but you can actually correct the mistake by just correcting the name here on the properties panel. If I click on this now, you can see that I have type scale, right? Regular variants, semi-bold variants, bold variants. Can you see that? So type scale is the major one. Okay, and I have regular variants. That one is now collapsed. This one is collapsed. This is expanded. If I collapse it, I have another one here, which is the mistake that I made. Can you see that now? So by changing that name, instead of bold variant, I put in BOLS, it created another folder. Do you understand? So what you can simply do is that if you want to correct it, just double click on it, right? And change that BOLS to BOLD. And click on enter. And it's going to actually augment the previous one by combining with them. So now you see I have just 3 folders here. 1, 2, 3. So let's say you are actually trying to make a text in the design, right? And let's say the text is just say hero text. Okay, and then you want to edit this text. There's no need for you to be looking for those properties of the line height or letter spacing. All you need to do is select the text. Once you select the text, come over here, check if there is any, if it came with any style. Now there's a style here, right? You can decide to detach the style if you want to. Okay, and once you detach the style, you come back to this setting. Now you want to give it a style, right? Let me make a copy of this text now. Let's say I want to give this text different styles. If I select the first one, what I simply need to do is click on this icon and I'm going to see all, you can see all the different styles I can give to it. So if I want regular variants, if I want to make this text regular and as a display text, just click on this first one. I have this. Very simple. If I select, let's say another text in my design and I want to make it bold, just scroll down, you're going to see type scale bold. You know that anything you are choosing here is bold. And you can choose whether it's a display, label, title, body text. If I choose a title text, I have this and it's bold. Right? And also, even as you have selected this, while it is attached to a style, you can also change it. For example, if I want to change this style, I don't need to detach it first. I'll simply come to the name of the style here, click on it. You can see that all other styles are coming out. So I can change this now from bold to simply title text. Right? You see, make it for what? For easy editing. You understand? So that's just the function of this. So with that, you don't really need this anymore. You've already saved it. Now, remember that you saved all these text and you give them a style. So if you select this text, right, if you come over here, it is the style that you used to save it that you are going to see. It's already saved. You can see that a style is attached to it. If you select this, you can see a style is attached to it. The name of the style will be there. If you hover your mouse on it, you can see that it says headline text, while the name of the style is boldly written here, regular, right? If I select this one, it's already telling me that this is semi-bold, semi-bold. If you want to detach the style and go to a normal type settings, just click on detach and you go to normal type settings, right? So take note of that. Now, the fact that you detach the style doesn't mean from this text. Now, doesn't mean that the style is detached from the documentation. The style is still here. Now, which one did we detach now? We detach semi-bold variant, right? So if I should detach that and then I come over here, let's go to semi-bold. You can see for semi-bold, everything is still your display headline. So if you detach a style from a text, you are detaching it from that text. You are not detaching it from the documentation because it's already documented. Do you understand? That's for that. Then there are times when let's say you've created a style like this, okay? And alternatively, okay, let's say you've created a style, okay, and then you want to edit the style. Let's say you've used the style to make a design, right? And you want to edit the style. So let's say for this text now, for example, I don't really like this color. Now, instead of just coming to edit this, I want to edit that style in every part of the design that I used it. Once you select the particular text or any text that has that style attached to it, all you can simply do is come over here and then click on this, and all the styles are going to come up. So if you want to edit a style, let's say I want to edit the display text, you can click on edit style. Once you click on edit style, you can see that all these properties have actually come up. I can decide to give all my text there. I can decide to give them a stroke, right? Let me give them a stroke. If I click on this now, all my text are automatically going to have a stroke. All text that have this style will have a stroke. So let's see. You can see that this text has that style, it has a stroke, okay? Any text that has that style above, you see, it will also have a stroke. So you don't manually need to come and, if you're making any editing, you don't manually need to go to all the text where you use the style and start editing them one after the other. Just go to the style, edit the style. That's just it, right? How do you edit it? Just come to this property here, click on that, and you can edit this, because what you save is actually the settings of that style. So you can actually edit the settings of that particular style, right? So with that, now we now have our type scale documented. So that is all for actually setting up a type scale and a reusable type scale. Okay, so that's for that. So for the task, all you need to do is download a new font and add it to the Figma font directory. You understand? And also try to actually replicate this process, because we are going to be using it. I want us to be using it. It doesn't matter whether it's perfect or not. Just try to replicate what you can replicate. Like I said, we're not supposed to be doing it now. You understand? But I just want you guys to start getting used to it so that later on it doesn't become a problem. Okay, so that's for that. If there's any question, you can ask. If there's no question, I think this will be the end of typography as it relates to this stage of the bootcamp.